Raccoon City had been built almost entirely by the Umbrella Corporation. When it was still a small Midwestern town, Umbrella moved in. Hospitals, a subway, a university, modern buildings sprang up, one after another. In this city, every structure, every wall, seemed to have Umbrella's name on it. Walk down the street and you could easily brush shoulders with an Umbrella employee. When Leon arrived at Raccoon City Hospital, he heard a recorded voice playing in the lobby. "My name is Nathaniel Bard, and the current time is 9:35 p.m. on September 28th. I am the director of the Virus Research Center. I hope someone can come and rescue me, but I'm afraid there's little hope. They won't want me to live. The Umbrella Corporation, those people, they will definitely kill me. This Resident Evil outbreak in Raccoon City was caused by them. I hope my following words can spread through this recording, save more people. At least so my reputation won't be ruined. Umbrella Corporation, my employer, ordered me and my team to participate in research on a bioweapon called the T-virus. Oh my God, what was that sound just then? I'll record it again later. I need to go see what's making that noise outside now." It was a video confession, Bard trying to leave a last testimony. Leon listened to the sounds from outside the hospital and activated his supervision to sweep the building. The hospital was overrun. The infected filled the halls. The only living person he could find by sight was the director of the Virus Research Center, but Bard didn't look like he had much time left. In Leon's estimation, within hours, Umbrella operatives would come and either kill him or steal the original T-virus samples. For now, though, he was lucky. Leon had come looking. The Super Mark I drone, piloted by Jarvis, arrived shortly afterward, following silently and descending with him. Leon pushed open the hospital doors. Blood-soaked figures in scrubs and security uniforms turned their heads. "Deal with them, Jarvis," Leon said, and moved toward the research lab. The infected in the lobby could be handled by the drone. The director was a middle-aged man in a white lab coat, hair receding, face drawn. He was locked inside his lab behind a heavy iron door, and something massive and reptilian was hammering on the metal from the other side, mouth wide and roaring. The creature had been drawn by Bard's voice. Bard crouched on the floor, sweating and trembling. He had hoped to be quiet and let it move on. Leon recognized the attacker at a glance. Hunter Beta, one of Umbrella's bioweapons, airdropped into the city for testing. In-game, it counted as a mini-boss. Leon gave it the respect it deserved and intervened. He struck past it with a heavy blow. The impact ripped the Hunter Beta and the iron door into the far wall, flattening them against it like a pressed sheet. The explosion collapsed Bard to the floor. He lay there, terrified, convinced the sound meant Umbrella had sent something even worse, a tyrant, and that he had no escape. Bard's hands shook. He tried to drag himself to a chair and resume recording, fingers trembling as he clicked the mouse to capture whatever time he had left. Before he could speak, Leon stepped into the lab. "Director Bard," he said, "who are you?" Bard blinked. Seeing a human instead of a tyrant jolted him to boldness. "I'm here for the original T-virus samples and the vaccine samples," Leon continued. "It would be even better if you could give me the research data as well." Bard's eyes narrowed with suspicion. Leon changed his tone. "Don't imagine I'm with Umbrella. I'm not. I'm here to get the virus and vaccines to save the city." "Save the city?" Bard scoffed. Facing another human made him braver, or at least less paralyzed by terror than the alternative of a monstrous death. "How do you know there are virus and vaccine samples here? No one knows that except Umbrella." Leon thought for a beat, then said plainly, "I'm not from this world. Your world consciousness asked me to help. That's how I know." He pushed the impossibility onto the world consciousness and spoke it straight. In a place like this, honesty and an obvious show of strength would build trust faster than any implausible disguise. As long as he demonstrated capability, the most incredible explanations would seem reasonable. To prove his point, Leon took a breath and exhaled sharply. A focused jet of air shot from him like an arrow, tearing a smooth, round hole clean through the opposite wall. Dust and rubble sprayed everywhere. Bard stared as if his eyes might pop out. The scientist who had always championed rational explanations now looked on the verge of conversion. "Unbelievable. The force of your breath. That's impossible for a human body. Are you truly from another world?" Bard whispered. Please, Bard babbled then, as if freed by the revelation, began to laugh, at first muttering, then hysterically, finally a broken, almost ecstatic laugh. For some researchers, encountering questions that rent the boundaries of their field could unmoor them. Confronting the idea of other worlds and a world consciousness had pushed Bard past that edge. Leon slapped him lightly on the shoulder. Let's talk about metaphysics later. Can you show me the research data? The hard copies? The electronic files can be useless. I need what you've printed. Bard's expression shifted from mania to practical fright. He touched his receding hairline. Right, follow me. All the research data has been printed and bound by hand. The electronic versions were destroyed. I had planned to burn these materials before I died. Thank God you arrived in time. Director Bard carried a thick stack of documents from the safe and handed them to Leon with both hands. These are most of the critical experimental data, plus the research notes and conclusions. Are you going to use this to restart the work? Leon lifted the 30-centimeter thick binder with casual ease and began to flip through it on the spot. No, he said indifferently. I'll finish reading them now, then head to Umbrella's underground facility for the next phase of improvements. Bard thought, finish reading now? That would take until the seas ran dry. But what happened next froze him. Leon wasn't reading in any normal sense. He flicked the corner of the thick stack, loosened his grip, and the pages fell and shuffled like a deck of cards. In 2 or 3 seconds, the entire pile had been rifled through. Leon closed his eyes, and after a few more seconds shoved the papers back into Bard's arms. That's enough. Burn them. Bard was speechless, eyes darting between the heavy binder and Leon's still closed face. I already read and memorized them, Leon explained with his eyes shut. But you flipped through the pages backwards? Bard didn't even bother questioning the plausibility that someone could memorize such a volume in seconds. The mere fact that the pages had been flipped so quickly was enough to leave him stunned. I memorize all the text, then reverse the page numbers in my head. Easy, Leon said, still eyes closed. Bard's mouth opened and closed. He didn't know whether to believe it. He doubted his sanity. In the end, staring at the unmoving man before him, he took the stack, went to fetch gasoline, and burned the documents clean. After all, this person had been hailed as the world's savior. A few strange abilities would be normal. Leon stood with his eyes closed. He wasn't posturing. As he absorbed the experimental data, something else became clear. When he processed biochemical information, his thinking became sharper, more flexible. The superbrain ability hadn't sped up per se, but his research talent in the biochemical field had been greatly amplified. Just recalling the data he'd memorized produced flashes of insight, brainstorming after brainstorming. This was the gift the world consciousness had given him, an enhancement of his biochemical research aptitude. If he compared himself to the prominent figures in this world, William Birkin, Alexia, Marcus, their raw talent might be similar, but none of them had a superbrain. In terms of creativity and insight, they might be comparable, but Leon's actual research capability now stood on a whole different level. After Bard burned the papers, Leon opened his eyes. Anything else? Bard leaned in. Bring every T-virus stock solution and vaccine sample you have. We have to leave now. Jarvis, Leon called. Jarvis had been piloting an exoskeletal battlesuit, sweeping the hospital and eliminating infected as it advanced floor by floor. The zombies there were almost wiped out. Is Jarvis your companion? Bard asked cautiously. He's my AI, you'll see. Leon placed the vials Bard had just retrieved into a crate and handed it to Jarvis. Then he grabbed Bard by the collar. Come on, the Raccoon City Police Department. Bard's startled scream came out of him as Leon and the armor shot skyward. Seconds later, they were approaching the police department from above. Jarvis was still 10 kilometers out, racing to catch up. Bard, suspended beneath Leon, hadn't yet recovered and kept shrieking. Leon tightened his grip. Stop howling, we're here. The trembling only made Bard scream louder, drawing the attention of nearby zombies. They twisted their heads toward the sound, searching. Leon ignored them and used X-ray vision to scan the police station below. Inside the modest building, there were corpses and the shambling forms of the infected. The Raccoon City outbreak had begun on September 25th, 3 days ago, and the police department had reacted quickly. They'd set up shelters, rescued civilians, and rigged explosives in the streets to thin out the hordes. Those measures had bought surviving residents a sliver of hope in the early days, but they came at a cost. The department had taken heavy casualties. What hastened the fall was a tragedy of sheltering the infected among refugees. Those hidden infections broke out inside the compound, and with the zombies pressing outside, the station suffered massive losses. Now, only 5 people remained alive inside the Raccoon City Police Department. One of them was Director Brian Irons, a corrupt, sleazy man who'd always holed up in his office. During his tenure, he had been in illegal cooperation with Umbrella, accepting bribes, covering up crimes, even running an adjacent orphanage to supply children for experiments. He was the sort of villain Leon had no patience for. Leon didn't hesitate. From a distance, he released twin heat beams. They seared through several walls and pinned Irons to his leather sofa. The director, who had been fiddling with the mayor's daughter's corpse on the table, planning to preserve it as a specimen, gaped as 2 red-hot holes burned through his chest. He touched them, blood bubbling from cauterized wounds, gurgled, and slumped forward onto the corpse. Jarvis arrived a moment later and settled into position. Bard, finally coming to his senses, stared down at the police station gate, mouth agape. "Raccoon City Police Department, we're already here?" he managed. Chapter 63, only 4 people left. He looked up at Leon, who was holding him, and blurted, "How did you do that?" Leon smiled but didn't answer. Finally calmed down. "Honestly, your scream just now was at least 3 decibels louder than when my brother cried for help." "That was an accident." "An accident. I'm not usually like this." Director Bard realized he'd lost his composure, awkwardly wiping non-existent sweat from his forehead. He looked down. On the dark street, scattered zombies wandered, and more than a dozen with rotting chins and arms pounded on the police department's iron gate. "What should we do now?" Mr. Savior?" Bard asked tentatively. "Just call me Leon." Leon smiled. "Next, we need to get into the police station." He lowered himself, exhaling a freezing breath as he neared the ground. Frost raced across the pavement. One after another, the standing and crouching zombies were transformed into ice sculptures. A layer of ice spread outward in a 300-meter radius around the police department, turning the whole block into a kingdom of frost. Strangely, the ice only coated surfaces. It didn't change the internal structure of things. A few dim yellow streetlights trapped in the ice still glowed and radiated heat, casting strange, refracted colors through the crystal shell. "My goodness, it's like the ice god waved his scepter." Director Bard's eyes reflected the frozen street. It looked surreal. "That analogy isn't quite right." Leon set Bard down. "After all, I'm only holding you." Bard laughed at Leon's tone. "It's my honor to be your scepter." Leon shook his head and walked toward the station, Bard trailing closely and peering at the frozen zombies and streetlights. He noticed the frozen figures weren't quite dead. Deprived of oxygen, their bodies were fading. It wouldn't be long before the ones in this block died quietly. Jarvis lagged at the rear, clanking as it moved. Winding between abandoned cars, the 3 of them reached the police department's iron gate. The gate was closed, and a dozen or so frozen zombies were suspended in a single block of ice in front of it. Leon tapped the ice with his knuckles. The iceberg shattered and collapsed into jagged pieces. Leon peered through the gap in the gate to study the station beyond, then activated Jarvis's built-in amplifier. "Is anyone inside? The zombies outside have been handled. Please open the door and let us in." His voice carried through the block. Even if the 4 people inside had been trying to sleep with earplugs, they would have been woken. In fact, they weren't sleeping. They were resting in the hall. A few minutes later, the front door opened. A tall, thin black officer stepped out, his right hand on his holstered gun and a flashlight in his left. He scanned left and right, then jogged to the iron gate. 2 more uniformed officers followed, mouths open at the sight of the frost. "Wait a moment. I'll open the door and let you in," the tall officer called. He eyed Leon and Bard, saw no obvious injuries or weapons, and went to pull the bolt. It was stuck, frozen solid. He yanked and pushed, but it wouldn't budge. "No, it's frozen in there. I need to get a flamethrower," he muttered, frowning. "Thankfully, the zombies are frozen and can't move. Don't make any noise. I'll be back." No need, officer. Leon stepped forward before he turned away. He grabbed Bard by the collar, leaped over the gate, and landed beside the officer. Sometimes the most primitive method is the simplest. The officer took a step back, impressed. Is that kung fu? Incredible! And thank you for saving me the trip to find a flamethrower, Leon said. He glanced at the other two officers. Come with me. Let's go inside first. It's suddenly freezing out here. Maybe I can find you a jacket. No need, one of the others said. I can handle this. I have a friend who needs to come in with me. Leon snapped his fingers. Jarvis, come in. The sound of thrusters cut through the courtyard as the steel armor, exhaust glowing, rolled into the entrance. Fuck, the tall officer swore and instinctively drew his gun. What the hell is that? We can talk later. Leon gave a small, mysterious smile and stepped into the police station. Before he crossed the threshold, he glanced back and, in a building a few dozen meters away, caught a flash. A red skirt moving past a window. Inside the lobby, the officers and the newcomers exchanged information. So he's the savior. You're a director from the virus center. That's a mech. The ice outside was caused by his breath. An umbrella is behind this crisis. The tall officer summarized after a few minutes. Leon's explanations and Bard's confirmations wound together as they talked. The three officers had been skeptical at first, but when Leon froze a table with his freezing breath, their attitudes shifted. Trust began to form. All right, we'll believe it for now, the tall officer said. He bowed his head slightly in introduction. I'm Marvin Branagh. He pointed to the other two. This is Elliot Edward, and that last one is, well, we call him Old Fatty. Only the three of you? No one else in the station? Bard asked. He still wore his white lab coat, which lent him an air of authority. Marvin pointed toward a curtained medical area behind them. We have one more person, but his condition isn't good, Mr. Bard. I'm afraid we need you to take a look. Bard glanced at Leon. Leon nodded. Go ahead. I don't mind. The three officers exchanged glances again. Seeing Leon assume the lead made them more inclined to accept what Bard and Leon had said. They fell into a cautious, fragile cooperation as they prepared to check on the wounded person inside. Chapter 64. 3 Survivors. Everyone stood at the entrance of the police station. Beyond the reception desk, the interior retained its old museum feel. Brown marble tiles underfoot, ancient stone pillars holding up the ceiling. The lamps set into the pillars had been gilded long ago. Their warm light looked almost like sunlight. A Statue of Liberty sculpture loomed behind the desk. Mr. Lyon remembered the place had once been a museum, then converted by the director to hide the entrance to Umbrella's underground lab. The access point lay under the statue and required 3 stone slabs to activate. They skirted the reception desk. Between the statue and the counter, someone had set up a makeshift emergency area with partitions. On a stretcher lay a bulky man with short hair and a deathly pale face. His body temperature was frighteningly low. He's infected, Director Bard said immediately, lifting the man to check the wound. It's on his arm. Judging from the symptoms, the infection is less than 3 hours old. There's still hope. One of the officers bristled. Why would you keep an infected person in the station? That's dangerous. Over the past few days, Bard had seen too many people unwilling to leave infected companions, causing further deaths. Hearing the words, "There's still hope," tightened everyone's faces. He's a STARS member, Brad Vickers. He's important to us. Officer Marvin's voice trembled. We found him collapsed in an alley and brought him back. There aren't many of us left. If he turns, we thought we had to try. Mr. Lyon opened his case and Jarvis, the armored unit, hovered beside him. Inside were 3 vials of dark blue viral stock, 5 samples of a rose-red vaccine, and 4 vials of antiviral serum. Marvin's hand went to his mouth when he saw it. Umbrella made a vaccine? Umbrella develops viruses. They also research countermeasures, Mr. Lyon said flatly. Bard took a vial of serum and injected Brad. After a full dose, the man's color shifted slightly, returning from the edge of pallor. The officers let out a collective breath. The small recovery confirmed Mr. Lyon's words. Since you're planning to save this city, Bard asked, what brought you to the police station? Mr. Lyon stepped toward the statue. There's an Umbrella Research Institute beneath the station. I intend to go down and synthesize more effective vaccines. We need access to the lab. Elliot, a middle-aged officer, brightened. You mean the secret passage? Officer Phillips was right. There really was something here. It's a shame she'll never hear this. He swallowed the regret. Mr. Lion crouched before the statue. With a sudden, effortless motion, he struck the base. The steel-reinforced stone slab gave like soft clay. There was no resistance. He lifted the statue and its foundation as if it were a block of tofu. The others watched, stunned by the raw force. A staircase appeared, leading down to a secret chamber whose polished corner already hinted at luxury. This was right under our noses, Elliot muttered, hands on his head. Marvin's face went hard. The director colluded with Umbrella. First things first, Mr. Lion said. Search the surrounding area for survivors. Clear any remaining zombies in the station, then we'll enter the Institute together. The streets outside are frozen by him, Bard answered, nodding toward Mr. Lion. You handle the survivor search. No problem, Marvin said. He and the two other officers quickly organized and left to comb the nearby blocks. Mr. Lion turned to Jarvis. You clear the zombies inside. Yes, young master. Jarvis took off and swept through the offices, tearing through the infected. 20 minutes later, the Super Mark I returned, chest scratched, likely from a liquor, but largely unscathed and speckled with dried blood. Mission accomplished, young master, Jarvis reported. Marvin's team came back at the same time, bringing 3 survivors. A round, gruff man cradling a small girl, and an Asian woman in a red dress and black stockings who moved with cool, practiced grace. These were the only ones we found nearby, Marvin said, disappointment and relief mixed in his voice. No others. Mr. Lion set the girl down gently and let the man speak. I'm Robert Kendo. Kendo's gun shop is just behind the station, he said. His voice was raw. This is my daughter. The woman produced an ID card. Ada Wong, federal investigator with the FBI. I was looking into Umbrella. She glanced at Mr. Lion. They say you're a savior. I'd like proof. Mr. Lion didn't bother to prove anything. He'd done enough. He turned as Robert Kendo's voice rose. You said you have serum. Give it to me. Give me the serum, and I'll do whatever you say. Bard froze and then pointed to the girl. She's infected. It's early, Mr. Lion said. She can still be saved. Before anyone could object, Jarvis took control of the briefcase, drew a vial, and administered the serum to the little girl. She was nearly unconscious. After the injection, she slumped into her father's arms. Emma, come on, Kendo muttered, holding her tightly. Color returned to her eyes faster than anyone expected. She remained unconscious, but the pallor was gone. Good, Bard said with a small smile. A happy ending for now. Satisfied that the child was stabilizing, Mr. Lion turned back toward the open stairwell. New mission, he said. Officer Marvin, one of you stays to protect the survivors and guard the station. The other 2 come with us into the Institute to help create more vaccines. He didn't wait for arguments. He disappeared down the stairs with brisk decisiveness. Director Bard and Jarvis followed, 1 human and 1 armor, descending into the shadowed passage where Umbrella's secrets waited below. The remaining few exchanged glances. Marvin gave the order, Kendo, you stay here. Elliot, come with me. Everyone else, rest here. Yes, Marvin, the pudgy officer replied obediently. Kendo, shaking, finally managed, is he really the savior? I didn't even get a chance to thank him. There's still time when he comes back. Thank him by getting your daughter well again. Marvin helped place Kendo's injured girl on a stretcher. Duncan glanced toward the entrance, worry in his voice. Are you sure you want to go into Umbrella's lab? That place. Mr. Lion is strong, Officer Elliot cut in. Nothing's going to happen to him. But it's almost unbelievable to call him the savior. We trust him. The pudgy officer nodded. Marvin stepped out from the makeshift medical partition. Let's go, Elliot. We'll follow him. 2 officers drew their sidearms and followed Marvin into the underground passage. Ada Wong watched silently from the side. After they disappeared, she said softly, you all seem to get along well. Oh, absolutely. We were all shocked by that mech and the freezing breath when he first turned up, the pudgy officer said, collapsing onto the sofa with a laugh. He glanced toward the passage. You don't mind being left here, do you, Miss Wong? Ada's eyes flicked to the tunnel. No opinion. I just need to say goodbye for now. She turned, smoothed her skirt, and slipped into the passage. Hey, you can't go, Kendo blurted, alarmed, but the pudgy officer waved him off. Let her go. Whether she's here to cause trouble or to investigate, she can't affect Mr. Lion. If that was the logic behind it, it said something about how the men here saw Mr. Lion, untouchable. On the other side, 4 people in a mech rode the elevator down to a deeper level. The lift circuit screamed an overload warning the moment the armor entered. "Jarvis, too heavy. You're gonna have to fly," Mr. Lion muttered. "Young master, your armor weighs too much," Jarvis replied, activating its thrusters so the suit could hover and reduce weight on the elevator floor. Mr. Lion punched the button again, and the doors began to slide shut. At the last second, a red blur slid in and wedged herself between him and the closing doors, stopping inches from him. Ada smoothed her skirt and said in a clipped tone, "These are safety shorts, gentlemen. Because you're a lady, I'll remind you you're exposed." "Mr. Raylith," Lion said dryly. "How gracious of you, Mr. Lion," Ada answered, forcing herself in front of him. The elevator was roomy, but she made a point of squeezing forward, tilting her chin, and drawing close. The distance closed until they could hear each other's breath. Mr. Lion knew the routine. Natasha pulled stunts like this sometimes when they talked late into the night. He knew the tricks. Step in, tempt, wait for the other to break. He could see the trap. In his previous life, he'd even had to help Ada into a ridiculous bunny outfit. He wasn't going to be flattered into losing his head now. He shifted subtly away. Ada was slightly taken aback. He really did behave like a gentleman. "I have no intention of causing trouble," she said. "It's my job. If there's danger, dealing with it is part of the job." She dropped a hand to her tactical vest and flashed a pistol. "Besides, Dr. Bard is coming down with you. Aren't you worried something might happen to him?" Bard, who had been silent, answered quickly, "I'll be all right. Mr. Lion will protect me." Since he'd started following Mr. Lion, Bard's confidence had soared. Even before this outbreak, he had never felt such absolute security. Several times he had wondered how he could stay at Mr. Lion's side permanently. Compared to Umbrella, Mr. Lion would be the best boss he could imagine. Ada prodded further. "So his strength is that great?" Mr. Leon didn't give a straight answer. "You'll see." Ada Wong was, of course, one of the key players in the Resident Evil stories. A freelance agent who worked for the HCF and occasionally for a faction called the Family. Compared to Natasha, Ada operated with fewer constraints and more personal freedom, but also, you could say, less steady, cold-blooded experience. At this point in her mid-20s, she still had a streak of naivety that someone like Natasha didn't. Ding. The elevator hit the bottom. The doors opened, and the group filed out, 4 people and a hovering armor, into a corridor that led down to a long stairwell. Mr. Lion led the way, forcing locked doors and freezing the zombies that staggered into their path with a measured wave of power. They soon stepped into the police station's underground sewer system. "Follow the sewers straight ahead, and you'll reach the Umbrella Research Facility," Bard said, looking around with a mixture of scientific curiosity and concern. Mr. Lion took to the air. He had no intention of wading through ankle-deep filth. Even his olfactory sensors were tamed against the stench. Marvin and the others watched him float, startled, then resumed moving. The rest of the group jumped down into the sewage. The murky fluid rose quickly to their thighs. Only Ada lingered on the steps, fingers curled around the railing, staring down at the black water and then up at the man hovering above it. Her mouth twitched. Mr. Lion watched her with an almost amused patience. After a moment, she sighed and, with a single precise leap, entered the sewer. Chapter 66. Opening a path through the mountains. "Stay behind me and keep your guard up," Mr. Lion called, then drifted forward, floating slowly. His casual clothes looked oddly out of place while he flew, like a high school kid trying to save the world between classes. They were now deep in the sewers under the Umbrella Laboratory. Mutated things leaped from the murky water and clung to the mossy cave walls. Infected people, half-swelled corpse and half-giant leech, 1-meter-long sewer insects, even 20-meter crocodile-like behemoths. Whatever Umbrella had been doing, they'd made the sewers more biodiverse than a hostile coastline. The monsters were vicious and numerous. A normal Special Forces team would have been in real danger, but Mr. Lion moved ahead of them. He punched through attackers and punched out walls. No creature could stand a single blow. No barrier slowed him for a second. The group advanced unimpeded. Aside from the hostile terrain, it felt almost like a hike. Even Ada Wong, who'd been on hyper alert, only managed to shoot a zombie fish pretending to be dead. Other than that, she didn't land a kill. Our Mr. Lion really does make you feel safe, Ada said, wringing her skirt with obvious distaste. I'll admit it, he's an absolute gentleman. They reached a platform above a sewage treatment pool. Everything here was built over water. Huge treatment machines rumbled and pumped nonstop. For now, at least, they'd escaped being waist-deep in filth. Marvin swept the area with his flashlight. Foul-smelling corpses lay in corners. Look at these people. Lab coats, combat suits. Umbrella really had a huge research base here, Elliot spat, clenching his jaw. They controlled this city. Those parasites deserve to die. Capital's controlling power, rather fitting for this country, isn't it? Ada said, moving casually behind Mr. Lion. Don't you agree, sir? Mr. Lion didn't answer. After a few steps, he suddenly ordered, "Back off!" Before Ada could react, he'd grabbed her arm and pulled her aside. A whoosh sounded behind her. A giant mutated insect had just swept through the spot she'd occupied. It tried to flee, but a whip-like kick from Mr. Lion smashed it into the wall until it exploded in a spray of insect goo. Ada felt the hair rise on her neck. Thank you. She pressed against Mr. Lion as she stepped back, then found his arm felt like marble. Nice physique, she couldn't help admiring. Mr. Lion raised an eyebrow. I think so too. Consider it a favor you owe me. Vain men don't get far with girls, Ada said with a curled lip. You never know, he replied, and they moved on. Further into the treatment plant, they came to a monitoring room. Through the glass, they could see a large platform on the far side, and on it several armored cable cars. There, Mr. Lion said. The cable car will take us to the research institute. Thank God, Director Bard muttered. He was the least fit of the group and already exhausted. He went to open the iron door, but it was locked tight. Let me, Ada said, stepping forward and pulling out lock-picking tools. I can get it. Before she could begin, Mr. Lion placed one palm against the iron door and the surrounding wall and pushed. The metal gave with a groan and fell inward. The two of them stared, both affronted and amused. Mr. Lion spread his hands. You could have mentioned that earlier. I take it back. Ada snapped her tools shut. Fine, let's go to the cable car. He turned to the monitoring room and squinted at a shadowed corner. Madam, if you intend to come with us, you can come out now. Everyone's weapons rose instantly, aimed at the corner Mr. Lion indicated. A thin, middle-aged woman with sunken eyes stepped forward, wearing a white lab coat and holding a pistol. Police, she said coldly. You shouldn't be here. The institute is full of infected. Leave now. Ada moved in, gun held with both hands. You and your husband created the virus. You're responsible for this disaster. No idle accusations. The woman's gaze sharpened. Now hand over the G-virus. Ada glanced at Mr. Lion as she spoke. I came here to eliminate Umbrella. The G-virus is far worse than the T-virus. It can't be left in this woman's hands. At the mention of the G-virus, the woman's expression shifted. Her eyes went hard. So that's it. You're here for the G-virus too, she sneered. Don't even think about it. With that, she tossed a grenade and fired at Ada. Oh no, danger! Marvin and the two officers lunged forward to tackle Mr. Lion and shield him from the blast. Mr. Lion slipped aside, caught the grenade in his left hand, and yanked Ada out of the way with his right. A bullet grazed Ada's arm. A few seconds later, he opened his left hand. Only a few wisps of black ash and fragments fell away from his palm. His hand was clean. Everyone froze. Someone had just covered a live grenade with a bare hand and walked away uninjured. What kind of person did that? The woman, Yani Bojin, who had been preparing to retreat into the monitoring room, reflected in stunned silence. Even the husband she had turned into a monster could probably not have done that. Mr. Lion looked at her for a heartbeat, then strode forward, grabbed her, and tossed her toward Marvin. Control her. We're heading to the research institute. They dragged Yani to the platform and boarded. Ada hesitated. She wanted to protest, but after witnessing him stop a grenade with his bare palm, she held back. At the cable car bay, they found the cars wouldn't operate without a staff wristband. Yani, having recovered her composure, smirked. I'm not handing over permission wristbands. Give it up. Marvin and the others instinctively looked to Mr. Lion, as if waiting for him to punch through the armored doors. Ada stepped forward first. Wait, don't just force it open. Forcing the car could cause a malfunction. She pointed at Yani. We should interrogate her. She's wearing a permission wristband. After the endless shocks and challenges of the day, Ada's cool facade had finally cracked. Before this, she never would have imagined herself asking questions like that with anything but certainty. Now, standing among people who kept defying her expectations, she found herself unsteady and cautious. Chapter 67. You have no idea of his power. Even after she had made such a huge sacrifice, Mr. Lion only looked at her oddly. What are you talking about? Do you think I only know how to use my fists? She shot back. Mr. Lion frowned in displeasure and snapped his fingers. Jarvis, I'm here, young master, came the armored voice. The iron armor that had stood inconspicuously stepped forward. Open the cable car and start it running. Yes. A few data tendrils extended from the iron armor and connected to the cable car's exterior display. Seconds later, the screen flickered, the armored door of the car hissed open, and Jarvis said, See, I have artificial intelligence, too. Mr. Lion winked at Ada Wong and was the first to step into the cable car. The others filed in behind him, complimenting his decision. Ada stood frozen for a few seconds, then tilted her head and laughed, half to herself. Heh, what a fool. She wasn't sure whether the remark was aimed at Mr. Lion or herself. She tapped her forehead and, resigned, followed the others into the cable car. Under Jarvis's control, the tram eased away from the platform, gradually picking up speed. There should be a lot of zombies and mutated creatures in the laboratory, Mr. Lion said from the middle of the group. Same plan as always. I go first, you follow. After we clear the underground base, we can organize the research materials and equipment, he added. I already have an initial idea to improve the vaccine. If things go well, I should have results by tomorrow morning. Bard looked impressed, Marvin and Elliot excited, and Ada clapped lightly, her eyes flickering with interest. A boastful kid, only 17 or 18. Go to college first, Yenny muttered disdainfully. The cable car arrived at the underground station in no time. When they stepped onto the platform, everyone exclaimed. I don't even know how much Umbrella spent here, one of the officers murmured. This place is another world. The underground laboratory was nothing like the sewers they'd come through. Instead of rough pipes and filth, the outermost layer here was high-strength titanium. Metal textures ran all the way into the entrance halls, and soft, sunlight-like indicator lamps illuminated the corridors. Marvin and the others felt as if they'd walked into the future. Faced with this high-tech facility, Mr. Lion's approach changed. No more smashing doors with his fists. He let that iron lump do the data decryption. In the sewer, there had been no electronic locks for Jarvis to hack, so breaking things down had been faster than waiting. Here, one click, and Jarvis had infiltrated the base's authorization system. The 3 heavy security gates surrounded by the base slowly rose. The 5 of them were granted high-level access. Automatic doors swung open as they approached. Inside, the lab was populated mostly by humanoid zombies. Mr. Lion immediately sent Jarvis in to clear them out while the others held back and searched the rooms. They found a number of researchers' diaries. Each journal documented, in small increments, the unfolding of the outbreak. An accidental infection during an experiment, the infected researcher turning, security dealing with the first cases, the growing panic, the virus leaking, and vermin carrying the contagion to the surface. I didn't expect it to start like this, Director Bard murmured, rubbing the corner of his eye. I thought only my team was doing this research. Dr. Bard, you were forced by people with malicious intent, Marvin said, trying to steady him. What matters now is saving as much as we can. While Bard and Marvin argued in whispers, Ada found Yanibo Jin nearby. Mr. Lion was combing through old security logs in the control room when his phone in his bag activated. Jarvis's voice crackled through. Young Master, the mutated creatures inside the base have been cleared. I have found a creature similar to a tyrant. It is pursuing a little girl who is hiding in a corner. Shall I rescue her? Little girl? Could it be Sherry Birkin? Mr. Lion asked, picking up his phone. In the records he knew the name. Sherry was the daughter of Yanni and William Birkin. In the files, William had been forced to inject himself with the G virus and had become a monster driven by a compulsive urge to spread it. In the old accounts, William relentlessly chased his daughter Sherry, as the virus's peculiar inheritance rules complicated things. You take Sherry and lure that monster over to the platform. I'll handle it, Mr. Lyon decided. The firepower of the Super Mark I Jarvis was enough to destroy William Birkin, but the G-Virus could cause continuous mutation and regeneration in infected hosts. If Jarvis engaged William directly, the containment could fail and the lab might be destroyed. Jarvis acknowledged the plan, and Jarvis moved off. They waited on the platform, which offered a wide, clear area ideal for a fight. A few minutes later, the iron armor came to a stop above them, trailing a plume of exhaust flame. It held a small blonde girl in its gauntlet. "Sherry," Yanni cried, voice cracking. "How are you here?" "Mommy," the little girl, terrified but relieved, mumbled, "This Iron Man saved me." Jarvis descended and released the girl into Yanni's arms. Ada, who had been holding Yanni tightly, relaxed her grip for the briefest moment. At 23, she still found herself unsteady in front of an enemy who was also a mother. The sight affected her. Yanni tore free and hugged Sherry to her chest. "Sherry, I'm sorry. Mommy hasn't been able to find you these past few days." She stroked the girl's head. Sherry's voice trembled. "Mommy, Daddy has become so scary. He wants to catch me." Yanni froze. Her eyes flicked to her daughter, searching for any sign of harm. "Did he hurt you? Did he feed you anything? Give you something to eat?" she asked urgently. "No, Daddy hasn't caught me yet," Sherry answered, shaking her head. Relief washed over Yanni for a moment, but then something darker crossed her face. Her inner conflict snapped into a determination that chilled everyone who saw it. "I'm sorry, Sherry. I have to do this." Without another word, she reached, grabbed the gun from Ada's hand, twisted it, and aimed it at her own daughter. Ada reacted instantly, wrenching Yanni's arm and pinning her to the floor. "What are you doing? That's your daughter," she hissed, voice flat with anger. "It is precisely because she is William Birkin's daughter that I can't let her live," Yanni said, each word measured but desperate. The rest of the group stared in stunned disbelief. How could any mother speak like that? Sherry fell back on her small legs, pressing away from her mother's face, bewildered. "Mom? Mommy," she whispered. "You don't understand." Yanni snapped at the silence around her. "You don't know what that monster is. The G-Virus cannot be allowed to spread. If it does, the world ends. If Sherry stays, William Birkin will infect her and turn her into something worse. Even if she leaves, he'll chase her down." Marvin stepped forward, his expression hard. "No matter what you say, that's no reason to kill your own daughter." Mr. Lyon suddenly spoke, twisting to look toward the exit. "Excuse me, William Birkin? That must be the monster we saw earlier." "You don't understand his power," Yanni retorted, unbelieving and furious. "You know nothing of what he can do." "If that's so," Mr. Lyon said, and without hesitation he began to move toward the darkness at the end of the corridor, toward the figure of William Birkin, who had just burst out of the lab. William Birkin staggered out of the research facility's main gate. Under the floodlights, his silhouette resolved. The right half of his body had grotesquely swollen, a huge eye embedded in the arm. Crimson muscle fibers burst through skin and twisted together. The left side looked disturbingly human, but zombified. Pale eyes immediately locked onto Sherry in the crowd. He let out a roar. He seemed to grow several sizes in an instant, like a famished beast finally smelling prey. He lowered his head and charged, the hideous right hand splayed wide, ready to sweep anything aside. Mr. Lyon stepped forward to meet him at the front, refusing to fall back. Even under that monstrous arm, his tall form looked slight, and the people watching felt a chill. They all knew Mr. Lyon was formidable, but Yanni had told them Birkin was worse, a monster that seemed unstoppable. Ada and Marvin had already raised pistols, ready to cover Mr. Lyon's retreat if needed. The clash finished in a single, impossible instant. Birkin's mutant speed was enormous, but Mr. Lyon was faster. He moved with a blur, twisted, and landed a hook. William Birkin's head exploded like an overripe melon under too much heat. For a beat, the crowd stared in stunned silence. Mr. Lyon silently withdrew his fist, turned, and the headless torso collapsed to the ground. "How powerful did you say he was?" he asked Yanni. Her face twitched with disbelief. With a voice that trembled, she managed, "You doing this will only speed his mutation. He'll grow stronger fast." "You should." Before she could finish, he turned again and released a heat beam at the corpse. Within seconds, nothing remained but a handful of carbonized ash. most of which drifted away in a small puff from Mr. Lion. The monster that could have evolved through 4 or 5 stages in the game had finished its curtain call. "Now what?" Mr. Lion asked. Yanni said nothing. She had wrestled for days with the idea of killing her own mutated husband, but could never steel herself. Now the decision was taken from her. She stood blankly staring at the pile of ash at Mr. Lion's feet, as if moving on autopilot. Ada frowned but didn't move to stop her. Everyone watched as Yanni walked over, cupped the ash in her hands, held it to her face, and silent tears ran down, unnoticed. "Mommy?" Little Sherry ran up timidly, then clung to Mr. Lion's leg, afraid to go farther. Yanni didn't look at her. She quietly stepped back toward the base entrance. For a long moment, no one said a word. Half a minute later, a single gunshot rang out from inside the facility. "Mommy!" Sherry's eyes went red, and she gripped Mr. Lion's leg even harder. The Birkin couple had never been close to their daughter. Sherry had first been chased by the monster William had become, then nearly shot by Yanni in a delirious attempt at righteousness. Now she had lost everything she had in this world, both material and emotional. All she could do was cling to the man who, according to the Iron Man's account, had ordered her rescue. He was the only lifeline left. Mr. Lion pursed his lips and stroked Sherry's little head, but he said nothing more. There was nothing an outsider could say to fix the family's ruin. The child would have to find her own way through it. "Let's go inside. It's been cleared. We need to produce the new vaccine as soon as possible." He gave orders with calm efficiency. "Marvin, Elliot, you and Jarvis, go salvage the resources from the lab, everything you can find. Ada Wong, do whatever you came for. Steal the G-virus if you must. Bard, come with me and assist in developing the vaccine. Sherry, if you want, you can help the others. Fetch coffee, tidy up, anything." He glanced toward Jarvis. "And one more thing. Jarvis, terminate and destroy this facility's self-destruct program. We don't want the base blown up in the middle of production." Everyone agreed and dispersed. Sherry wiped her eyes, looked once at the doorway Yanni had entered, bit her lip, and went to the kitchen to make coffee. Ada stopped Mr. Lion at the doorway. "You knew I was an imposter? Since when?" "From the first time I saw you," he said. "Oh, then why let me follow you this far?" "I heard you're a freelance agent, working for multiple factions at once." "That's right. Interested in working with me, saving the world and all that? You want to recruit me?" Ada smirked, amused. "Ha, sounds interesting. I'll think about it, Mr. Lion." She reached up to hook his chin with one finger. When he dodged, she just blinked and gave that cool, enigmatic smile. "Nice meeting you, and thank you." She gave a small wave and slipped into the inner passage. He muttered under his breath about her theatrics, and without more fuss, grabbed Bard and flew toward the laboratory. At Redstone subway station, Jill Valentine said goodbye in front of the departing train. "Jill, are you sure you want to go find Stark?" "The Raccoon City PD isn't close to here," Carlos said. "I have to try," Jill replied. "He said he'd save this city, and I believe him. I can help, even if it's a little." She checked her ammunition. Carlos sighed helplessly. "I don't know where you get this kind of trust." "After what I saw him do you still doubt?" Jill lifted a rifle and gave a small smile. "Once my mission's done, I'll come find you guys." "Then I'll see you at the police department," she added, flashing 2 fingers, and ran into the burning street. 2 hours later, in the lab, Mr. Lion snapped his fingers. The antidote and vaccine for the airborne T-virus, done. He held 2 small test tubes of red liquid and handed them to Bard. "Run these on the white mice. Especially check whether the vaccine works when diffused into the air." To increase the vaccine's effective range, he had altered the T-virus's transmission method. Where the T-virus had once spread only through bodily fluids and contact, his modification allowed airborne exposure. The original Resident Evil version had been catastrophic enough. This new T-virus, in transmission efficiency, now rivaled later, even more devastating strains. Opening Pandora's box had been dangerous, but Lion had built a lock, an aerosolizable vaccine designed to counteract that risk. Half an hour later, Jarvis reported, "Mr. Lion, the vaccine and serum worked on all the mice. My estimate is the efficacy in humans shouldn't differ by more than 0.3%. What about the vaccine's effective range?" "As you predicted, once diffused into the air, it's effective within 30 meters for up to half an hour." "Excellent. Marvin and the others, start the production workshop. Begin mass production of the new T-virus vaccine and serum. Mr. Lion grabbed another bottle, this one a dark purple liquid. And this, the new anti-G serum. Run tests on it too. Bard's hand trembled slightly as he took the bottle, awe in his voice. You made an airborne G-virus? No, Lion said quickly. The G-virus hasn't spread widely enough to need an aerosol vaccine. This is a potent anti-G serum. It can reverse infections if administered within 20 hours. Bard visibly relaxed and hurried off to begin testing. Mr. Lion picked up the coffee Sherry had made and took a sip. Next, he said, it's time for my own research. 6.5 hours later, Mr. Lion stepped out into the lobby of the Research Institute's East Wing, rubbing his forehead. Marvin and the others immediately closed in. It was 7 a.m. on September 29th. Brother Lion, do you want to rest a bit? Little Sherry asked, holding a small box. Inside were the ashes of Anne Birkin, cremated a few hours earlier, and some carbonized fragments of William Birkin. No, just a headache, Mr. Lion said, waving her off. Over the past 5 hours, combining data from the progenitor virus with the T and G viruses, while the superbrain ran at full capacity, he had produced a new virus. He hadn't spent decades in a lab like William Birkin, but his results were startling. The S-virus prototype. The S prototype had the broadest infectivity and lethality he'd ever seen. It could spread through the air, remained active for at least 6 hours after release, and showed incredible resilience. Initially, he estimated more than a 90% chance that an infected person would turn into a zombie, super strong, nearly impossible to kill. Paradoxically, if an infected subject survived the initial phase, they would retain their sanity and gain extreme physical enhancements and regenerative abilities. The catch was transmission. In practice, it was still much less efficient than ordinary airborne diseases. Breath and ordinary droplets would not transmit it reliably. Only when bodily fluids or blood containing high viral concentrations were exposed and evaporated would it spread effectively. Even with these limits, Leon knew men like Spencer or Wesker would hail it as a ladder of human evolution and push a global agenda the moment they learned of it. As he synthesized the virus, an ecstatic surge from the world consciousness washed over him, but that joy frightened him rather than comforted him. He didn't want an uncontrollable evolutionary plague. What he needed was an agent guaranteed to enhance human regenerative capacity, something safe enough to treat Tony without turning him into a monster. With the S prototype's high mutation rate, Lion realized the path forward would require more work. After the Raccoon City crisis, he might have to travel to Europe to integrate traits from Plaga and E-mold biology. He also wanted to return to the Marvel world to study differences in temporal flow between the two worlds. At the last moment, he'd made one reckless experiment. He took a drop of his own blood, the blood that had become a fusion of Kryptonian and human elements since his awakening, and exposed it to the S prototype. The results were catastrophic. The Kryptonian-tinged blood immediately absorbed the virus and began to replicate with terrifying speed. Within breaths, it seemed to take on a will of its own, corroding the glass vial and trying to escape into the air. If it had gotten out, combining the S prototype's airborne traits with his blood's hyperactivity would have been unthinkable. The world consciousness went into a frenzy of fear and despair. Lion lashed out with the heat ray and incinerated the container. The ash on the test bench was a blunt reminder. His bloodline research had a long way to go. He had already destroyed every other trace of the S prototype in the lab. The only original sample left was the one in the syringe he handed to Jarvis for safekeeping. Even the room had been sterilized and demolished to prevent any unauthorized access. Bard, how did vaccine and serum production go? Lion asked. Director Bard held up a report. The G-virus serum was very successful. Any organism infected within 5 hours was cured after injection. We've produced sufficient quantities of the new T-virus vaccine and serum to cover the entire city, and with Jarvis's help, we've modified over 500 antiviral bombs with the new serum. Lion nodded. That'll do. Start operations now. We'll begin citywide vaccine distribution. In a few hours, Raccoon City should be back to normal. Marvin and Elliot snapped to attention, straight as if about to salute. We'll move the bombs right away, Mr. Lion. Marvin saluted and hustled out with Elliot. Bring Jarvis in the battle armor, Lion added. He had Jarvis take control of the armor to help ferry the boxes. He glanced at Ada Wong, leaning against the wall. I thought you'd left. Aren't you in a hurry to hand the G-Virus to your boss? Ada had apparently showered and changed. Now in a red jacket and black slim pants, sunglasses on, she walked toward him with a practiced sway. That was my previous boss, she said. Now I have a better one. She tilted her chin. Do you want to hire me, Boss Lion? Long term? She'd watched him all night, seen his power, his brilliant mind, and more than anything, the righteousness that seemed to radiate from him. She felt inexplicably drawn to him, curious and eager to stay close. Is that an application? Lion raised an eyebrow. He hadn't expected Ada, a free agent, to volunteer herself. If it's an application, do you think I qualify? She replied. Barely passed. Congratulations, you're hired. Call me boss from now on. Lion smiled. You can set your own salary if I ever earn legitimate income in this world. So I'm an unpaid intern? Ada smiled crookedly. Or are you paying me with something else? Sorry, our company doesn't pay interns. Lion didn't take the bait. He'd long since been hooked by Natasha. He crouched and scooped Sherry up. Come on, Sherry, time to go. Ada didn't look put out. She followed, expression amused. Half an hour later, they were all packed and heading back. They took the cable car, then begrudgingly waded through the sewers again. Lion carried Sherry on his back. Ada kept close at his side, and wooden crates of antiviral bombs were stacked across them. Marvin and the others shouldered crates too. When they reached the police station, more than a dozen survivors had congregated. The overweight officer inside assumed the group had gone out to resupply. When the boxes were opened and people learned they contained antiviral bombs and vaccines, there was an outpouring of relief. Old man Kendo and his daughter Emma bowed and thanked Lion over and over. Kendo, Lion said, brushing off the gratitude, too much thanks is meaningless. Just help when we deploy the bombs. He reached down and ruffled Emma's hair. Marvin says you're the best gunsmith here. Look after yourself and your daughter. Sherry, who had stood back, tugged Lion's sleeve. She clutched the urn to her chest, shoulders hunched, hesitating. The sight of her made Lion think of himself at one, confused and anxious when he first remembered his past. He had Tony. Sherry had nothing. Everyone here was a stranger to her. This world had been harsh, but she had the courage to seek shelter. Lion bent and patted her head. All right, I'll protect you, Sherry. She smiled, tears turning to laughter as she hugged the urn tighter. Leon, a voice called from the police station entrance. Jill Valentine, still in her blue denim vest, pushed the door open and came inside. Bard and Carlos followed close behind. Leon hadn't expected to see Jill here. Before he could say a word, she rushed over and hugged him tight. Ada, who had been opening a wooden crate to load antiviral bombs, glanced up at the sound. She watched the embrace without changing expression, only letting her eyelids drop a fraction. After a few seconds, Jill let go. I never expected you to save Bard, she said, breathless. He got infected trying to cover for me. I don't even know what to say, Leon. Thank you. Truly, thank you so much. Leon had already endured a lot of gratitude that day. Bard, now recovered, hurried over as well and repeated his thanks before introducing himself formally. Leon waved them off, calling it nothing and steering the conversation back to the crisis at hand. We need to save the citizens of Raccoon City first, he said. We can't just stand here celebrating. Why are you here, Jill? He asked. I came looking for you, Jill replied. I want to help save Raccoon City. She hesitated, like she had more to say, her eyes speaking ahead of her words. Before she could continue, Ada walked over. Boss, when are we leaving? Ada asked. Boss? Jill blinked. You're from another world. Is this person from your world too? Of course not, Thor, Ada replied smoothly. I'm Ada Wong, a former federal agent. Now I work for Boss. She used the old false identity again and stood casually close to Leon, as if they were intimate. Jill's expression tightened for a moment. Ada added lightly, I have many names. Ada Wong is just one of them. What was your original name? Leon asked, curious. In his previous life's game, Ada had been a mystery. No one knew her true background. My old names aren't important, she said. When I met you, Boss, I was called Ada. I'll be called Ada from now on. Her answer silenced the room. Everyone turned to look. Marvin and the others with surprise, Bard thoughtful, Sherry puzzled, Jill stunned. At that moment, Jarvis's voice reached Leon in his head, a high-frequency whisper audible only to him. "Young master, Mr. Stark asked me to remind you to be wary of strangers who might try to trick or deceive you," Jarvis warned. Leon smacked his forehead. "That Tony, even across worlds, he still meddles." "Aren't you talking about Tony?" Ada's composure wavered, confused by the sudden mention of someone else. Leon hurried to explain. "That's Tony Stark. Don't read into it." Jill burst into laughter. "That Tony must be important to you. Or Miss Ada here just looks like Tony?" she teased. Ada met Jill's gaze, and for a beat there was an unreadable exchange between them. "Cough, cough, enough gawking," Marvin barked, reading the room. "Let's get moving." The hall snapped back to action. 10 minutes later, everyone was armed, sorted into teams of 3, and spread out to distribute the vaccine throughout the city. Leon didn't go with them. To maximize efficiency, he would freeze the city's outer layer with his freezing breath, while Jarvis and the teams cleared buildings and delivered vaccines and antiviral bombs. Their plan was straightforward. Teams would throw vaccine canisters when they encountered civilians and deploy antiviral dispersal bombs when they ran into zombies. The antiviral bomb scattered thousands of tiny needles containing serum. When the needles embedded in a zombie's body, they injected serum that inactivated the virus, causing the creature to die. The vaccine worked more simply. Once released, it evaporated and spread, allowing anyone exposed to begin producing antibodies naturally. Leon took to the air with Sherry clinging to his back. Flying along the outer buildings, he exhaled his freezing breath. Within minutes, the city's surface turned to ice and frost. Zombies on the streets froze solid. Leon lowered the temperature enough that the rapid freezing formed ice shards inside the creature's cells, tearing them from the inside out. One by one, the frozen figures died. Zombies inside buildings were left for the ground teams to clear. With the new vaccines and serum, operations went smoothly, though ordinary volunteers were still slow. 2 hours later, the teams returned to the station. Leon had even gone back to the research institute for a full-body disinfection and sterilization. When everyone reconvened in the police station's main hall, excitement and relief were written on every face. The Raccoon City rescue operation had succeeded. If there was one regret, it was that the world consciousness had not sent more gifts. It seemed unconcerned with saving a small city. "Leon, you saved this city." Marvin and Jill led the chorus of thanks. The hall filled with survivors they had picked up along the way. Thousands of people cheered Leon's name until it felt like the station's dome might burst. Leon was uncomfortable with the adulation. He kept his remarks short. "You are the real heroes," and left it at that. After half an hour, Marvin, Jill, and the others had settled the survivors and gathered in the conference room. Leon got straight to business. "I'm going to leave for a while and return to my world," he announced. Seeing their anxious faces, he raised his hands for calm. "Don't worry, I'll be back soon. I'm leaving to test the time flow between the two worlds so I don't stay away too long. I'll leave Jarvis here to help you," he continued. "It has already collected all the evidence of the Umbrella Corporation's crimes. When you're ready, you can release it to the network." Umbrella has treated this area as a testing ground. The U.S. government may not react kindly to that information. Be prepared to evacuate. Whoever discovers the anomaly here may move to destroy the city to erase any traces. "Don't miss me too much. I'll be back soon." He spoke lightly, but the goodbyes were hard. People grow attached in unexpected ways. Sometimes a single shared event is enough to forge a deep bond. "You sure you'll come back?" Ada asked, meeting his gaze. "I still haven't been paid." Leon gave her a quick hug. "Does this count as payment?" Ada smirked, one hand on his chest, her thumb sliding down the ridge of his muscle. "Not even close, but nice body, big boy." Leon was speechless. He snapped his fingers. "Jarvis, assist everyone with work and join combat when needed." He patted Sherry's head and told her to listen to Ada and Jill, gave a few more hugs, then waved. "I'm leaving. Goodbye, everyone." When he finished speaking, Leon closed his eyes and activated his dimensional travel ability. He didn't need to search. Among the chaotic bubbles of the void, the one representing the Marvel Universe appeared automatically, followed by a dense cluster of other bubbles shrouded in dark mist, the Marvel Multiverse. He selected his destination and paid the same energy cost as before. In the next instant, Leon vanished without spatial disturbance. After the initial shock, the room sank into quiet. Honestly, I'm already starting to miss him, Marvin tried to lighten the mood. He never lied to us. We were lucky the world consciousness sent such a savior, someone added. You know, our department was supposed to have a new recruit yesterday, another officer said. His name's Leon too, Leon S. Kennedy. Right, I thought he might be that new guy, Elliot joked. But that recruit is a day late. I hope he's safe and as good as our Leon, someone everyone would be happy to applaud. Chapter 71, Regression and Time Difference Marvel Universe. Stark Mansion, Los Angeles. Beep, beep, beep. The moment Leon stepped into the underground room, every instrument and light flashed red, and the alarm screamed like a death knell. Dida, carrying a disinfectant sprayer, rolled over on its wheels and started spraying him immediately. On the other side, Ben raised a fire extinguisher, bristling and ready. That's enough. Stop! Do I look like a home invader for you to put on such a big show? Leon waved his hands at Ben. The alarms and red lights finally quieted. Young master, you're finally back. It seems you didn't have a smooth time in the other world, Jarvis announced. Finally? How long have I been gone? 10 years. Leon's heart skipped a beat. If 10 years had passed, the snap might already have happened. It has been 12 hours and 37 minutes since you left. It is now 7:49 a.m. the next day. Ah? Leon raised an eyebrow. 12 hours and you say finally? Jarvis, I think you need to reload your language module. Choose your words more carefully. Young master, I chose that word based on Mr. Stark's mental state since you left, Jarvis replied. So Tony missed me that much? Leon couldn't help laughing. I think so. For the first 9 hours, he checked whether you had returned about once every 7 minutes, Jarvis said. And in the last 3 hours, Leon teased. Mr. Stark fell asleep 3 hours ago. He has now been alerted and is on his way down. Did I just hear you talking bad about me? Tony poked his head out from the stairs, wrapped in a white scarf, clearly having rushed out of bed. Seeing Leon, the excitement in his face folded immediately into lazy indifference. He shuffled over and flopped into a chair. Look who finally decided to come home. Suffered some injustice out there and came back to complain? It's just that I was worried the empty nest old man at home might be lonely, Tony said. Leon smiled. I didn't expect you to be so dependent on me. 12 hours and you're already calling my name in your sleep. How could I not hurry back? Calling your name in my dreams? You're joking. Tony laughed and then stopped. Jarvis told you? What do you think? Shit. Watch your language, Tony. Leon sat on the workbench next to him. Sir, I did not tell young Master Leon that you called his name 17 times in your dreams over the past 3 hours, Jarvis reported. Tony slapped his own face. Great, now you've said it. Apologies, sir. Tony slumped his neck and then looked Leon over. So you had a rough time in the other world? Why do you say that? Leon asked. Jarvis had said something similar earlier. Tony spread his hands and looked left and right theatrically. It's obvious. Your Mark-I armor is gone, and so is the Jarvis subsystem that was inside it. That made sense. He'd left wearing armor and had returned without it. Something had happened. Oh, I meant to leave the armor there, Leon said, and explained briefly how he'd crossed over and what had happened in the Resident Evil world, leaving out the part about researching Kryptonian blood and the virus. Tony stroked his chin. World consciousness and a virus. Very interesting. But one thing puzzles me. Did you also spend 12 hours there? Tony asked. That's right. You mean the time flows are the same on both sides? Leon nodded. I thought the same. Fascinating, isn't it? Tony clapped. That's the problem. He picked up a box and a pencil and poked the pencil straight through the box. You know that in regions with different gravity, time runs at different rates, right? Don't tell me you don't know that. Leon blinked. Of course I know. Relativity. Excellent. Tony jabbed the pencil so it protruded on both sides of the box. Assume this box separates two universes and this pencil has passed through. The left side represents a larger volume of space, the right side a smaller one. They were standing at the front of the garage, so his macroscopic analogy made sense. If the larger side has greater mass and the smaller side less, do you think time would pass the same on both sides? Leon frowned. No, unless the two universes happened to have equal mass and the Earth mass equivalent on my side matched perfectly. Exactly. Tony put the box down and snapped his fingers. But the chance of that is practically zero. Do you still think it's reasonable the time flow on both sides would be identical? A flash of realization hit Leon. He had assumed equal time flow because so many novels treat crossings that way. He had simply accepted it. Tony watched the dawning understanding on Leon's face and went on. I think your traversal between worlds is probably also a traversal through time nodes. Our world doesn't stop operating when you leave. The universe won't pause itself because of a tiny blip of energy. When you return, you cut into whatever the current time point is. Which moment you cut into, whether the exact moment you left or sometime later, is determined by how you re-enter, and entering at different time points could cost you different amounts of energy. You need to experiment a few more times. Tony looked the proud mentor, patting Leon's shoulder. Having a good brain isn't enough. You also need to use it, kid. Leon looked at him helplessly. You win this time. Fine. Tony beamed and started humming. Enjoy your moment of pride. I'm going to try crossing over again right now. Leon let him bask in it. Wait. Tony jumped up so suddenly his white scarf slid off. This time you have to take me with you, right? It's only an extra 1% of the energy. One more person won't matter. It's dangerous. Don't pick up the virus on your first trip over, Leon warned, and then noticed the triangular glow on Tony's chest. You put the arc reactor back on? You synthesized the new element? Tony grinned proudly. Yep, synthesized 2 hours after you left. I call it badassium. What do you think? Leon's mouth twitched. Honestly, pretty badass. If my dad knew you named an element that, he'd probably crawl out of his grave and punch you, Tony said. Sorry, the old man's already been cremated. He can't crawl out, Tony deadpanned, his dark humor intact. So are you taking me or not? I'll think about it. By the way, who was it who said I don't think enough just now? Who? Who would dare say that about you? How annoying is that person? Tony looked around mock outraged. Chapter 72. Desperate Virus. Leon finally agreed to Tony's request to come along. The biochemical crisis world wasn't much of a threat to the two brothers. Even if they picked up a virus by accident, there would be vaccines and serums ready as backup. Consider it a trip with Tony. The last family vacation he could remember had been after junior high graduation, when he, Tony, and Pepper went to Dubai. It was supposed to be a family trip, but it turned into a 3-day party at a villa. Fresh out of junior high, he'd almost graduated all over again. This trip to the biochemical crisis world felt, in a way, like making up for that missed high school graduation trip. Leon dialed Natasha from his bedroom. Tony still needed to install some recording equipment on his armor to document the crossing, so they wouldn't leave for a few hours. While he waited, he remembered a virus from the Iron Man movies, Extremis. It granted hosts amazing abilities, rapid regeneration, super strength, super speed, and in some cases the ability to generate fire or electricity. Extremis might be obtainable and could provide clues for developing the S-virus, so he called Natasha right away. What's the mission? Natasha asked as soon as the call connected. Why so blunt? Can't I just check in on the living conditions of my beloved subordinate? Leon replied, playing it stubborn. It's not even 8 in the morning, Natasha shot back. What else would the man who refused to pay me 4 days ago be calling about if not a mission? Leon blinked. He hadn't expected Natasha's grudge to run that deep. All right, there is a mission. I'm in the office building in New York, and right now it's safe here, she said, meaning no one was listening. Do we have any widows undercover at Pioneer Technologies? I need a virus they're researching called Extremis. There was a pause. Leon heard the faint click of keys as she checked her files. The widow codenamed Tracy used to work as a mid-level researcher there, Natasha said. You can pick up the reagent in Tennessee in 3 hours, or I can get it to you in Los Angeles at 2. Natasha's efficiency was infuriating. I'll come there. That'll be faster. He clicked his tongue. I have to say, the sisters are impressive. You should make more time to drink with them. They've been asking about you, Natasha said, then hung up. Leon stared at his phone for a beat, flung it onto the table, and muttered, a subordinate daring to talk back to a superior. How inappropriate. 3 hours later, he was at the former Red Room safe house in Tennessee. Natasha led him inside a cabin in the woods that looked like a simple two-story rustic house from the outside, the kind that could fit a family of 5. Once he stepped through the door, though, the reality changed. There was an underground complex, a modern base carved 4 levels under the house. There weren't many people down there, only a handful of widows he recognized from drinks. They greeted him warmly and went back to their tasks. Natasha took him into the inner command room, opened a safe, and produced a vial and a USB drive. "This was stolen by me and a few sisters with Tracy's help," she said. "Are you going to use it for research?" Leon turned the vial over in his hand and slid the USB into his pocket. "I glanced at some research notes. It's got major problems right now, but I need it. I'm working on a virus that grants super regenerative abilities. Extremists could give me ideas for the S-virus." Natasha's eyes picked up. "Regeneration? Could it fix physical defects?" "Yes, in theory, but Extremis has severe side effects and isn't safe as is." Leon patted her arm. "I know. I'm confident I can fix its flaws, and fast." "I'll be waiting," Natasha said, suddenly wrapping an arm around his and stroking his chest. "So, hands on, boss. Can I get paid today? Here?" Leon glanced at the single desk in the command room. Natasha followed his gaze, sauntered over, and sat on the desk with her legs crossed. "Right here, right now," she said. An hour and a half later, Natasha was slumped in a chair, disheveled and barely able to stand. Leon straightened her clothes and pinched her cheek. "If you're hopeless at it, you shouldn't be so addicted," he teased. "Be gentler," she rolled her eyes. "I've been accommodating your demands the whole time," he said, fussing over her. "Salary's paid, I'm off. Keep working on liberating the other widows. Be careful, and contact me if anything happens." "Leon," Natasha called suddenly, "do you know Pioneer Technologies has been kidnapping beggars for human experimentation?" He stopped. "They've started already? You're telling me because you want us to do something?" "If you agree, in 2 days it could become Stark property," she said. Leon raised an eyebrow. "Excellent. Of course I agree, but you must be careful and contact you if anything happens." "Got it," she smiled. "I'm counting on you." He tugged his pants up and left without another look back, making sure to take the Extremis vial and the USB drive with him. 1 p.m., Stark Mansion, underground chamber. "Where did you go? I couldn't find you." "Jarvis couldn't locate you either," Tony said, standing with his hands on his hips in full armor. He was buzzing with excitement about crossing worlds and had modified the armor at breakneck speed. Losing his brother right before departure was like being unable to find a bathroom in an emergency. "I asked Natasha to get a sample of the Extremis virus. It'll help with my research in the other world." Leon set the metal case on the table. "Extremis?" Tony was curious. "That's the one developed by an old acquaintance of yours, Killian?" Leon gave a quick rundown of the virus's origins. Tony nodded thoughtfully. "Sounds promising, though stable delivery seems unlikely. Who's Killian? Did I know him?" "Don't worry about him now," Leon cut in. "Let's just go." "All right." Leon placed a hand on Tony's armored shoulder and activated his biofield. He closed his eyes and let his consciousness sink into the dark, searching space between worlds once more. Chapter 73, World Changes. The place was no longer empty. A chaotic bubble hovered there now, permanently anchored. The instant Leon's consciousness brushed it, he understood. The bubble represented the biochemical crisis world. The world was open to him, permanently, unconditionally. But when he tried to select the moment he'd left the Resident Evil world, the energy feedback for his travel ability spiked to 30% of his stamina, 30 times the cost of his first jump. Leon experimented. Pushing the target time further back reduced the required stamina by 1% for each day he moved the destination earlier. By the 30th day after he'd left, the cost had fallen back to the original 1%. Beyond that, the 31st day, the 32nd, the energy requirement stopped changing and remained at 1%. Tony had been right. Returning to a past time in a world demanded an extra energy tax. Traveling into the future, however, didn't change consumption. He also discovered limits on selectable times. He could not pick the night of September 28th, nor any time before he had first appeared in the Resident Evil world. Once he had entered a world, its past before his arrival was locked to him, though any future moment could be chosen. Leon then tried marking another life to bring along. Tagging Tony shot the energy cost up to 11%. Marking the entire Stark villa as well produced no further increase. The cost stayed around 11%. Life was expensive to carry, matter comparatively cheap. Satisfied he roughly understood the travel mechanism, Leon stopped probing. He signaled to Tony, "Get ready, it's about to start." "I'm ready. Hurry up, I can't wait to try cheeseburgers from another world," Tony shouted, impatient and excited. Leon set the destination, 30 days after he'd left the Resident Evil world. In the next instant, both of them vanished. Resident Evil World, October 29th. A tropical rainforest. Two figures who had no business standing there materialized in a flash. A startled flock of birds erupted and scattered. Leon opened his eyes and looked at Tony in the armor beside him. He used supervision to peer through the suit and confirm Tony's body remained in its original, kidney-deficient state, a small relief. He waited a beat. The iron armor vibrated, the faceplate lit, and Tony woke up. Tony blinked and scanned the unfamiliar woods and wetlands. "Leon," he blurted instinctively. "Awake? Your conditioning still needs work. I've been waiting forever," Leon teased. "Feels like I just woke up." Tony patted his head through the faceplate. "Where are we? The Amazon? Oh, right, my recorder." Tony slapped his helmet, slightly panicked. "Jarvis, did the suit record the travel? Especially that void Leon said he couldn't open his eyes in." "Damn," Tony muttered. He sounded annoyed. Jarvis replied, "Sir, in the garage just before departure, the armor's circuits were disconnected for unknown reasons. Instruments did not operate normally." "How is that possible?" Tony frowned. "So nothing was recorded?" "The armor's circuits disconnected at the start of the travel," Leon said. "That happened to me last time too." "I suspect it's a protective mechanism," Leon added. "There's so much information outside a world that a single glance could overload a human brain. Being effectively asleep during travel may be a form of protection." Tony shook his head. "Maybe, so where are we now?" "Have Jarvis connect to the network and search," Leon said. He closed his eyes and listened to the world. Explosions, screams, fighting, roars, a flood of negative impressions hit him. Leon instinctively suppressed superhearing. The sounds were wrong. When he'd left, he had thought the Raccoon City crisis resolved. He'd left Jarvis and arrangements behind. Yet everything he heard now made the world sound like it had fallen into an abyss. Smoke shrouded almost every horizon. Cannons and gunfire roared everywhere, mingled with wails and cries. What had happened in 30 days? As he wondered, an invisible fluctuation descended. Instinctively, Leon linked to it with his travel ability. A torrent of complex emotions rushed into his consciousness. Ecstasy, resentment, frustration, relief, and an incessant plea. Leave. Evolve. Out of control. Gift. Save. Gift save. The world consciousness, the world itself, was begging for help. Leon realized, while he'd been away, the world consciousness had done something that had pushed this world close to losing control. It wanted him to clean up the mess, and it was offering a gift in return. He raised the price in his mind, hoping to trade, double his research capabilities, perhaps. But the world's reply was a wash of helplessness. Its previous enhancements were already at their highest standard. Leon snorted. "Are you that useless?" he thought, and the world responded like a frightened child. Then the ground around him shivered with scattered white gold lights visible only to him. They gathered into a larger orb and floated toward Leon, intending to merge. He knew this was the gift and didn't resist. But the instant the orb met him, his iron body ejected it. Leon stared, stunned. The world poured more information into him. Only after putting it together did he understand. The light orb was a positive enhancement, a gift that would transform a human body into a constitution perfectly adapted to the native biology of the Resident Evil series. No side effects, total compatibility. But his iron body's immune system had rejected it automatically, judging it as something that might weaken him. "This is useless to me," Leon groaned. Then he clapped his hands. "Of course, merge it into the person next to me. That's practically giving it to me too." The world obeyed. The light swayed and merged into Tony's body. Tony's faceplate suddenly popped open. He looked at Leon as if he were a fool. "What are you doing? Did your neural synapses collapse and you're having a seizure?" His voice was sharp. "Something merged into me." "Oh, what is this?" like a hot water bottle on my chest. He jumped up, scratching, fidgeting with his suit, even unzipping his armor and lifting his shirt to check himself. You look like you're the one losing it, Leon said. I was talking to the world consciousness. It modified your body. A warm feeling all over is a modification? Did it turn me into a Kryptonian? Tony frowned. No, it lets you freely integrate the native biological factors of this world into your body, and they'll merge perfectly. What kind of modification is that? Tony leaned his head back, clearly grossed out. Sounds like I'll become Frankenstein. It's a gift from the world consciousness. Better to have it than not. Be grateful. Leon shrugged. More emotions flowed from the world. Save. Evolve. More. There were additional rewards waiting. Let's get the lay of the land first, Leon said and launched upward. Tony refitted his armor and followed. They floated side by side when Tony's Mark IV suddenly emitted a different, excited Jarvis voice. Young Master Leon, you're finally back. Jarvis's normally mechanical tone quivered with something like relief. Jarvis, are you linked into the Super Mark I subsystem? Leon asked. Young Master Leon, many things have happened since your departure, Jarvis answered. It would be difficult to explain everything at once. Keep it short, just the main points. Leon motioned for Tony to land. Chapter 74. Destroy the world in 30 days. After they landed, Tony took off his armor and let Jarvis take over. The story begins after young Master Leon left, Jarvis said. On the morning of September 29th, after you left, Miss Jill Valentine and Sheriff Marvin led the department on a citywide search for survivors. By evening, the city had been cleared, and over 90% of the zombies had been eliminated. But just as you warned, Umbrella discovered the anomaly. They airdropped 6 tyrants into the city. Fortunately, everyone managed to neutralize them with serum bombs. To avoid further escalation, Sheriff Marvin decided to evacuate Raccoon City that very night. A convoy of tens of thousands left in a single, unstoppable procession. Even the military checkpoints outside the city allowed them through. Once emptied, Raccoon City ceased to interest most factions. A few special teams went in and found nothing, and attention faded. A day later, those who had not heard from you dispersed temporarily. Jill and Marvin were abruptly transferred to the New York Police Department. Miss Sherry and Mr. Bard left with your new subordinate, Ada Wong. Other survivors received official resettlement, though the compensation was poor. After things stabilized, Ada Wong was attacked by the HCF organization for not handing over the G-virus. She had me take Sherry and Bard and hide with her in rural Canada. From there, I connected to the internet and exposed Umbrella's crimes. As he spoke, Jarvis projected footage taken by the armor, complete with annotations and stills. Tony couldn't help but quip that Leon had good taste in girlfriends. Leon frowned and listened. So things went well despite the twists. What happened next? He asked. Jarvis continued. The turning point came on the morning of October 1st, a Resident Evil outbreak in New York that quickly spread worldwide. But after Ada Wong infiltrated Umbrella and I was hooked into their internal network, we discovered the real origin. The global crisis seemed to start in New York, but its root cause was actually in Raccoon City. It all began the morning of September 30th, when Marvin, Jill, and the others led survivors out. A special Umbrella operative who had blended into the crowd quietly stayed behind. His name was Hank. He infiltrated the underground lab alone to recover the G-virus. Fortunately, Mr. Bard had already destroyed the viruses and vaccines. Hank came back empty-handed, but as he left the lab, he was bitten by a rat that had crawled out of the sewer. That rat, half a day earlier, after we left the laboratory, had entered the ruin you destroyed. It had been infected with a prototype S-virus. Jarvis played surveillance footage. A rat burrowing into a collapsed lab and emerging shortly after. The timestamp read 11 a.m. on September 29, less than an hour after Leon left the biochemical crisis world. Jarvis went on. Hank didn't think much of the bite. He killed the rat and went straight from Raccoon City to New York. He arrived on the evening of September 30th. On October 1st, he went to Umbrella's New York branch in a terrible state. The footage showed Hank, still in combat gear, stumbling into an office building. The video sped up. 10 minutes later, screams burst from the building as people poured out. Explosions followed. a 3-meter-tall behemoth tore free of the flames, covered in blood, roaring skyward. Umbrella's soldiers fired guns and cannons, but the shots only caused repeated, stronger mutations. Those splattered with its blood began to mutate as well, their bodies twisting. The footage jumped 2 hours. A dense horde of zombies crowded in front of the Umbrella building, spent heavy weapons littered the ground. The original monster Hank had become still stood among them, its eyes blood red. Hank mutated inside Umbrella, Jarvis said. He infected everyone he encountered. Based on our models, the probability of an infected person turning into a zombie exceeded 98%. Those infected who didn't immediately become zombies slipped into comas and were quickly devoured. The crisis tore through New York. Local survival rates fell below 1 in 1,000. Jill and Marvin, who had just arrived at NYPD with my remote assistance, barely escaped that afternoon. Jarvis switched to more footage. New York engulfed in flames. That was only the beginning. When New York became irreversible, the military escalated. But these zombies had physical abilities more than twice those of their pre-infection bodies. Moreover, roughly 1 in 100 zombies became a monstrous variant like Hank, extremely resilient. Even a 125mm tank shell that left half a charred head wouldn't necessarily kill one. Carpet bombing was required. And there were too many of them. Among New York's millions of zombies, there were tens of thousands of such monsters, and their numbers continued to rise because ordinary people who smelled their blood became rapidly infected and assimilated. Finally, seeing the situation spiral, the Eagle faction used nuclear weapons. Tony reacted sharply. Nuclear weapons? Yes, Jarvis said. At 7:30 p.m. on October 1st, 3 nuclear bombs were detonated over New York. That night razed the city, but Umbrella harvested the evolutionary breakthrough. They extracted virus material from the zombies, and after repeated experiments, discovered something terrifying. Although 1 super zombie appeared for every 100 zombies, among every 100 infected people, there was also 1 survivor who retained sanity and did not turn. These survivors fell into a coma at first, but when they awoke, they were indistinguishable from ordinary people, only integrated with the virus and possessing an immune physiology with greatly enhanced strength, agility, and intellect. A traitor named Albert Wesker returned to Umbrella then and volunteered for the experiments. After injecting the virus and surviving, his strength reached 20 tons, and his speed reached 150 meters per second. Umbrella called the virus extracted from these zombies the God Ascension virus. After Wesker grew stronger, he seized control of Umbrella Corporation. By then, Leon had already exposed Umbrella's crimes, and the company was being hunted worldwide, Jarvis said, but Wesker ignored that. He launched a plan to evolve humanity by releasing the God Ascension virus globally. Umbrella had branches almost everywhere. Even under warrants, they could release the virus. On October 8th, European time, the airborne God Ascension virus diffused into most of the planet overnight. Within hours, the capitals of scores of countries fell. 5 days later, White Bear Country abandoned its eastern European borders, moved survivors to Siberia, and set up a temporary capital on the permafrost. Most cities in John Bull and Gallic Rooster fell. Command posts moved to hardened bases. They weren't defeated by zombie strength so much as the virus's infection efficiency and poor management. By October 14th, the only relatively intact country was Rabbit Country, which had strict customs and superb mobilization. Their soldiers wore protective suits and held the southwestern and northern borders. On October 15th, more and more superhumans, those infected but who survived, were noticed. Their existence changed the resistance strategies worldwide. On October 16, the entire U.S. fell into crisis and the economy collapsed. Texas declared independence that day. On one hand, the bombing of New York destroyed morale. On the other, some superhumans seized power and formed a new government. On October 17, 16 states, including Florida and Louisiana, declared independence. It was also on that day that Jill, Marvin, and others, moving through the states, were trapped in a small Missouri town. I responded to their distress call, eliminated the zombies around the town, and helped them escape. On October 18th, Jill and the others returned to Raccoon City in Colorado with my help. At Ada Wong's request, I went to Canada and brought Bard and the others back to Raccoon City. Everyone reunited on October 19th when Ada released her findings. The God Ascension virus was actually the S-virus prototype you had researched, young Master Leon. That day, Jill voluntarily asked me for the original virus solution and injected herself in the wilderness. She survived. Because it was the original solution, she became stronger than ordinary superhumans, exceeding 30 tons of strength and running faster than 200 meters per second. On October 23rd, Colorado, led by Jill, declared independence with its capital in Raccoon City. By then, most southern states had declared independence. Only 7 northern states still backed the old federal government. On October 27th, a force called the Family took power from the old U.S. government and dropped a nuclear bomb each on already fallen Moscow and London, claiming it would clear zombies and save humanity. On October 28th, White Bear Country dropped a nuke on Washington for the same reason. The old government failed to intercept it. This morning, October 29th, the federal government announced it would launch a nuclear strike on White Bear Country's temporary capital. White Bear Country said it would retaliate with strikes on the capitals of various independent U.S. states. Right now, there are 5 hours left until they simultaneously launch dozens of nuclear bombs. Jarvis finished. Tony's hands trembled. His face had gone pale. He looked at Leon as if seeing him anew. "This is the virus you developed?" Tony's pupils widened. "You've only been there 12 hours, and you almost destroyed a world?" Leon's expression hardened. "I developed the virus, but I destroyed it. I clearly smashed every container, demolished the lab, even used X-ray vision to confirm there were no living things left." "Not even a spider," Tony muttered. "Then where did that rat come from?" Leon snapped. "How do you explain that after it was infected, it didn't bite anyone else, but somehow bit Hank and then was killed? This isn't coincidence." Leon replayed the emotions the world consciousness had shared earlier and finally understood. Leave, evolve, out of control. Gift, save. Save. Leave meant his departure. Evolve meant the world consciousness's drive to promote evolution. The consciousness had basic emotions but no logical foresight. It assumed Leon would not return. So the moment he left, it acted to continue evolution. It drove a rat into the ruined lab to inhale whatever stray S-virus particles remained. S-virus particles could survive up to 6 hours after dispersal. Leon estimated that much had volatilized when he destroyed the containers, leaving only tiny, scattered strains in the air. Those would be harmless to a human passing through, but the rat inhaled them all. The virus multiplied wildly inside it. The rat then ran out, and fate brought it to Hank. "You tell me," Leon said bitterly, "this whole mess is the world consciousness digging its own grave. Can it be blamed for that? I never imagined it would be so radical." He rubbed his temple. "Enough. Let's go to Raccoon City first, then decide what to do." Chapter 75. Authority. Genetic Auto-Locking. Jarvis's subsystem had already warned Jill and the others. By the time Mr. Lion and Tony arrived at Raccoon City, their old acquaintances were waiting just outside the perimeter. The city was unrecognizable from the last time he'd seen it. Steel walls ringed with barbed wire and iron spikes enclosed the entire place. Thick, acrid coal smoke hung over the rooftops and filled the air. As soon as Mr. Lion's craft touched down, Sherry pushed through the crowd and ran to him. "Big Brother Lion." The little girl, eyes wet with tears, leapt into his arms. "I was so afraid you wouldn't come back, but Sister Ada said you wouldn't abandon us, and you really came back." Sorry. Mr. Lion ruffled her hair. "I was gone too long. I promise, next time I go, I'll take you with me." Jill and Ada Wong came up beside them. "Talking about leaving again right after you return?" Jill teased. "Boss, why don't you just get rid of that world consciousness while you're at it?" Ada, wearing a trench coat with a bandage across her face, moved with her usual unruffled grace despite the disarray. "Welcome back, Mr. Lion. I never imagined the world consciousness would wreak this kind of havoc. It's hard to put into words." Jill's face was more complicated. She wore a combat uniform now, but there was a new edge to her, decisiveness bred from hardship. Their shared experiences had made her a different kind of leader. "You really think our world might be beyond saving?" she asked, lips tight. "Is there no way? Don't start." Director Bard interrupted with a wry smile. "When we met again, I never expected the world to look like this, but seeing you back, so full of spirit, that's something to be grateful for." Jarvis had already told them everything. No one there believed the future was bright, but they were still relieved to see the man who made it through. Mr. Lion scanned the faces around him. Marvin, Bard, Elliot. Every familiar person was present. Somehow, over the past month, the world consciousness had kept them alive. Otherwise, how could these people, who had been little more than background figures in the original timeline, have survived a global catastrophe of this scale? "Saving a world is nothing," Mr. Lion said, opening his arms and drawing them closer. "Don't hang your heads. I promise, children will still have quiet desks, and the sun will still shine on the world." A hand in his chest tightened at the admission. The world had been ravaged by a virus he'd created. Could he fix it? The world consciousness had just descended again, and it had made an offer he couldn't refuse. Half of the world's control authority and the ability of genetic self-locking. He had never encountered that first authority before, but it sounded powerful. The genetic self-locking, however, was tailor-made for him. It would let him actively control the stability of his own genes. With it, his research into the Kryptonian bloodline would be far more manageable. He could seal his own genes so that any blood or hair leaving his body would automatically lose any genetic information he didn't want leaked. For Mr. Lion, that ability mattered as much as any power boost. He hated being dragged into cleaning up the world consciousness's extremes, but there was no choice. The rewards on offer were too substantial, and those rewards would only be granted if he successfully saved the world and guided biological evolution. The world consciousness handed out what it had, not what he wanted. A glimmer of hope spread across the room. "Come inside and we'll talk," Mr. Lion said. "Oh, this is my older brother, Tony Stark. He just came along to take a look." Only then did everyone notice the person inside the golden red armor. "So you're Mr. Lion's older brother. An honor to meet you," they gushed. "Your younger brother is extraordinary. He must come from an exceptional family." Tony's mouth twitched. Compliments for the wrong person were the one thing he hated most. They should have said, "So Mr. Lion is your younger brother. No wonder he's so brilliant." Tony decided he'd have to give these strange locals a proper demonstration of genius. The Raccoon City Police Department now served as the capital office for the Colorado Republic. As its leader, Jill ran the place, deploying from there to hunt zombies or to coordinate defenses. In the police station's conference room, Director Bard, as head of the National Virus Research Center, Marvin, as director of the National Security Bureau, and other officials sat facing Mr. Lion, who stood at the head of the table, feeling slightly unreal. A few hours felt like an eternity. Former junior officers and deputies had become national figures almost overnight. The new country was tiny, only a few 100,000 people, many still locked inside the city. But it was the center of a fractured world. "The most urgent problem is the nuclear missile White Bear Country is about to launch," Bard said. "We have no way to intercept it." Jill added, "On top of that, the number of zombies migrating from other territories keeps increasing. Our defensive pressure is rising every day." "And those super zombies," Marvin said grimly. "Aside from me and the iron armor, no one in Raccoon City can stand against them right now." There were over 40 nascent countries within what had been Eagle Country. What had once been interstate communications had suddenly turned into international diplomacy. The situation was absurd and terrifying. Jill looked at Mr. Lion. "How do we proceed, Mr. Lion? The specifics are up to you." He thought for a moment. "The solution is simple," he said finally. "I'll destroy that nuclear missile, then I'll go take out the super zombies." After grasping the general situation, he made decisions quickly. "Only great power can produce miracles. I'll handle those problems before tonight." "But to save the world," he added, voice hardening, "ordinary zombies are the real long-term threat. Even if a vaccine were developed to reverse infection, it would be a slow, uphill battle. In India, for example, nearly 80% of the ordinary population had died or turned. If almost 1 billion zombies weren't mindless, they would have already overrun the globe. How could normal people fight them? Not to mention zombie birds, rats, and insects spreading disease across continents." "There's only one way to turn the tide," Mr. Lion said, leaning on the table. "Research a new S virus, one that transforms ordinary people into superhumans. Chapter 76. Destroy the Nuclear Bomb. The meeting ended. Jill stayed behind in the former director's office to handle the paperwork. Marvin and the others accompanied Leon on a tour of the city before heading down to the underground research facility. They had already cut a skylight above the complex and installed a new elevator that led straight to the entrance. Everyone rode the elevator down together. "I don't think we're going to be eating hamburgers in this world," Tony muttered to Leon, complaining. "The virus has rolled this place back to the Dark Ages. The streets are full of sleeping people, and there's this constant stench everywhere." "So do you regret coming?" Leon asked in a low voice. "Regret?" Tony acted as if Leon were joking. "What's that? I don't know the meaning of that word." His big eyes grew serious. "Since I'm here, I have to do something for this world. Consider it atonement for your sins." "You can't blame me for this," Leon said. "I didn't know the world consciousness would go this far." He grinned. "That was a joke earlier, but I do mean it. I have to do something. Remember, I'm Iron Man." "All right, Iron Man. What do you want to do? Build new suits down here? Research your S-virus prototype." "You're joking again. Your expertise is energy, materials, and machinery." "Am I joking? Fine, I'll ask you a few Resident Evil-related questions." Leon tossed out several high-level bio questions he'd been thinking about. Tony answered them all without hesitation. "You answered all of them? When did you sneak in a PhD in biology? How come I didn't know?" Leon was genuinely surprised. Tony shrugged. "I studied for a few days after you mentioned wanting to research Kryptonian genes." "Only a few days? Then you really are a genius. Think you're the only fast learner?" Tony waved a hand. "Speed of learning is just the foundation of being a genius, kid." Leon realized then that Tony's comprehension speed wasn't far behind his own, despite Leon's superbrain. Tony had indeed lived up to Thanos' line about being cursed with knowledge. When the elevator reached the lab, Tony practically pulled Leon inside. His grasp of S-virus research was astonishingly quick. Often before Leon finished one sentence, Tony had already figured out 3 steps ahead. For the first time, Leon felt that same rapid comprehension reflected in someone else. They discussed and experimented in tandem. One spark of inspiration in one of them always ignited another in the other. Their ideas fed each other like alternating steps, pushing upward in a constant spiral. Bard, the director, and his assistants watched with stunned disbelief. 2 such abnormal minds, both in one world, working together. Half an hour later, they produced a tube of orange reagent. "S-virus prototype vaccine," Tony said. "Forms antibodies to block infection, works through airborne transmission, but it will also remove the enhancing effects of the S-virus prototype." Tony stroked his chin. "That's good enough for now. Whoever gets it, take it and test it on mice." Leon held a bottle of golden reagent. "S1 virus modification successful. Probability of mutation after infection is reduced by 70%, and the strengthening effect remains, but it's still a long way from the final goal." He brought out the briefcase he'd carried in and took out Extremis and a USB drive. "Tony, first see if you can fuse Extremis with the S1 virus." Leon shrugged off his white lab coat. "Further improvements will need other reference materials. I'll go look for them, and while I'm at it, destroy some nuclear bombs." "You'd better hurry," Tony said, eyes fixed on the golden vial. "In a few hours, a perfect version of the S-virus might be on this table." Tony's research had convinced him that this virus could be a ladder of biological evolution. He felt the trip had already been worth it. The idea that they might someday craft a final version and, as brothers, push an entire world's evolution forward thrilled him. Leon wasn't worried about Tony being infected. With Tony's special physiology, the virus could no longer turn him into a zombie. At worst, it would make him stronger. Satisfied, Leon left the underground lab and shot straight into the sky. He accelerated so fast he broke through the exosphere in seconds and drifted out into space. His cape, or rather his sleeves, fluttered silently in the void, while his supervision scanned the entire Earth, locking onto super zombies one after another. Judgment descended. 2 searing beams of heat dropped down from outer space to the surface. For this era, they were the most lethal space-based weapons imaginable. The aimless super zombies wandering the streets were enveloped by scorching light from above. Their trillions of cells screamed collectively as they were instantaneously blasted back to their most primitive molecules. Towers of red light furrowed the crust, as if God had taken a pair of chopsticks and stirred the human world. Wherever the beams passed, the land ruptured and the seas boiled. Over the Indian subcontinent, millions of super zombies roared at the sky as if to challenge the wrath, only to be turned to ash inside the light in an instant. The two pillars swept from the Pacific through the Indian Ocean, pushed from South Asia into Africa, and even gouged a deeper trench beside the East African Rift Valley. The sea and clouds parted in their wake like Moses parting waters. When the two pillars had plowed across the globe, the divine punishment slowly subsided. Those who had been preying on others felt as if their hearts had fallen into an abyss. The suffering survivors prostrated themselves and prayed. For that moment, many believed in the existence of God. But Leon didn't stop there. After 20 minutes of purging tens of millions of super zombies, he turned to the nuclear bombs. He dove into Earth itself. No nation here had deliberately shielded its weapons to hide them from prying vision, and Leon's sight revealed the storage sites of every nuclear device. He passed through mountains and swam through oceans. Even bases designed to withstand nuclear blasts couldn't hold against him for long. Within minutes, Leon had encompassed tens of thousands of nuclear bombs from the US and White Bear under his biofield and pushed them all into space. He continued outward until he was hundreds of thousands of kilometers beyond the exosphere. Only then did he unleash his heat rays and destroy every warhead. High temperatures and pressure forced instantaneous fusion. Brilliant explosions bloomed across the void. Invisible penetrating radiation and electromagnetic pulses rippled outward. Countless satellites watched the spectacle at once. Leon stood with his back to Earth, his silhouette flickering in the firelight like a god surveying heaven and earth, capable of grasping everything. He didn't hide his face with his biofield. Half of it was lit by the explosions, the other half bathed in sunlight. Screens all over the world recorded that image. The face, as if carved by knife and axe, was seared into the minds of millions watching their displays. Chapter 77. Collect experimental materials and have fun Raccoon City. Ada Wong, Jill Valentine, and the others watched Leon's figure on the screens. He just destroyed all the nuclear bombs from both the Eagle and Bear factions. Even Ada, usually ice-cold, felt a flicker of agitation. Jill stared at the monitor, a wry smile curving her lips. I thought getting superhuman would close the gap between us, but I never imagined he'd be this strong. Leon, you're amazing. Sherry cheered, arms thrown up. He saved us again. Marvin and a subordinate exchanged glances and spread their hands. See? That's why we all call you Kennedy, not Leon. Leon S. Kennedy rubbed the back of his neck, grinning awkwardly. Maybe I should pick a nickname. Sharing the same name as someone famous puts a lot of pressure on me. In the research institute, everyone who'd seen the nuclear detonation on their feeds erupted into cheers. Tony only glanced briefly and went back to his work. He knew Leon's capabilities better than anyone here. Next on Leon's list, the Plaga parasite and the E-mold. He dropped back toward Earth, vanishing from satellite feeds as he plunged through the atmosphere. Meteoric friction lit his passage. He crashed into a small village in Spain's valley with a ground-shattering impact. Houses were ripped apart by the shockwave. The earth cracked and collapsed in spiderweb fractures. When the dust settled, Leon rose from a 10-meter-deep crater and flew toward an old stone castle at the heart of the village. The medieval keep was grand and classical. Leon paused a moment to take it in, then kicked at its outer wall. The whole complex crumbled like sand. People crawled from the ruins, stunned but unharmed. Leon had controlled the demolition. He scanned the crowd and fixed his gaze on a hooded figure at the back, clutching a scepter. Osmond Sadler, Leon said, hand over the Master Plaga. Sadler, leader of Los Illuminados, had tried to control the world with Plaga. Every head turned toward him. The man beneath the hood had shadowed features, plotting something. He dropped to his knees with a wet thud. My lord, I am Sadler. But the Master Plaga is gone, Sadler stammered. My lord, please, give me more time. Gone? Leon asked. Isn't it right here? He stamped down, crushing Sadler's head beneath his boot, then incinerated the body with a heat beam. A wriggling parasite fell free from the remains. I hate lies. Leon muttered as he pocketed the specimen. He scanned the ruins. Destroy all Plaga within 3 days, or you will be destroyed. Dust swirled as he vanished. No grand exit this time, only a whisper of movement. The stunned silence broke into frantic kneeling and prayers. Minutes later, he reappeared over a Romanian village. With his biofield-enhanced speed, Leon moved like a teleporting shadow. The settlement ringed an inner complex of castles. He studied the area for a week, pinpointed the mold's location, and dove in. A solid mountain gave way beneath him like tofu, and he found a massive fungal aggregate nested in a cavern, the mold. It looked almost infantile and pink, breathing slowly. Leon could sense the rhythm of billions of hyphae carrying nutrients through it. This is the third evolutionary key in Resident Evil. The mold, he said. He produced a syringe, plunged it into the fungal mass, and drew out a full tube of hyphae. Then his eyes flared heat, and the mold was gone in seconds, reduced to ash. A howl ripped through the cave the instant the fungus died, an immediate, agonized cry. Leon punched through the cavern dome, rose, and began incinerating the scattered hyphae. "How dare you! Stop this!" a voice screamed. Miranda, the long-lived, E-mold-infected woman who had become the master of this territory, charged toward him, followed by a dense crowd. Men and women, some scarcely human anymore, all bearing E-mold infection. Leon had come to destroy the E-mold and its carriers. According to the world consciousness warnings he'd received, it could evolve into another global catastrophe. If it could be stopped now, he would do it. He ascended, and unleashing everything he had, exhaled a freezing breath. In seconds, the whole village was encased in a single gigantic block of crystalline ice, houses, people, even the lake frozen solid. Leon could see Miranda's contorted face locked within the transparent mass. "I remember she lived for over 100 years, he murmured. "The E-mold is unusual, all right." Walking to the edge, he braced and lifted the entire ice block, more than 3 kilometers across and over 200 meters high, with a single push, and flew into space. Satellites across the globe tracked him again. Viewers watched, stunned, as the great god hurled the ice mass from Earth and shattered it with a single punch. A glittering storm of ice crystals, no bigger than a millimeter, sprayed outward like a white fireworks display against the black. The spectacle was beautiful enough to silence the commentators for a moment. When their cameras swung back, Leon was gone. Back at the police station, Leon received a hero's welcome. Jill led the chorus of thanks. She snapped a salute through tears and pulled him into a tight embrace. The hall filled with applause, cheers, and sobs of relief. Confetti cannons popped around him, paper fluttering like a waterfall. Someone opened champagne, and Leon pressed his thumb against the bottle's mouth, shaking it until wine sprayed in a glittering fountain. They'd all watched him on the feeds, seen him use heat to annihilate super zombies and detonate nuclear threats. Today was the happiest day they'd had in months. People crowded him, men and women trying to plant a grateful kiss on his cheek, eager to boast they had met the man who'd saved them. Problems that had seemed insoluble, super zombies, nuclear bombs, had been neutralized in less than an hour. Leon's name had become a shorthand for the future. They lifted him up and tossed him into the air like a beloved at a wedding. Someone pushed him up onto the platform, begging for a word. Leon didn't relish the spotlight. It dragged up memories of a childhood under Tony's watchful eye, never more than an observer. Still, he knew the crowd wanted something, so he cleared his throat, looked over the suddenly quiet hall, and started to sing, the Internationale, in Chinese. His low, not quite loud voice carried through the room, and one by one people joined in, switching languages from English to Russian and back. When the song finished, cries and cheers rose together. Some wept, others laughed. Everyone surged forward again, desperate to embrace him. The celebration stretched late into the evening. Later, Tony arrived at the station with a group of researchers. He dove into the revelry, dancing with girls on his arm, drinking Bordeaux with beautiful company at his waist. The joy that had been absent for a month descended suddenly and completely, as if the world had been given permission to breathe again. Chapter 78, SS-Type Strengthening Serum. Leon spent the night in a fog. Alcohol couldn't make him sleepy, but the faces that hovered at the edges of his consciousness after drinking made it impossible to think, and in the end, everything felt unreal. When he woke the next morning and saw Ada and Jill sleeping beside him, still smelling faintly of alcohol, he understood why his head hurt. He straightened the sheets and decided to leave the room quietly. At the police station, he used the shower to wash away the blood still clinging to him, changed into casual clothes, and then walked down to the underground laboratory. Tony wasn't there. The last Leon had seen of him the night before, Tony had been leading two women with wavy hair and vanished around a corner. He probably wouldn't stir before noon. The lab was empty. Yesterday's revelry had apparently put the newly established city on pause. Leon got to work alone. He told Jarvis to open Tony's research log from the previous day. He had planned to pick up Tony's work and push it further, but what he read surprised him. Tony had reduced the S-virus's mutation rate to 5%. That was close to the effect of a true evolution agent. For Tony, that kind of progress was astonishing. Leon read carefully. Tony had hit a bottleneck. Attempts to integrate extremists had failed until he tried an unexpected medium, his own blood. Using his blood as the integration medium sent the experiment leaping forward. The world consciousness granted physiology Tony possessed proved to be an incredibly versatile substrate for the virus. By analyzing how the virus changed when it entered his bloodstream, Tony had successfully fused extremis with the S-virus and lowered the mutation probability to 5%. He'd taken to calling it the Type S2 evolution virus in the notes. But the work wasn't finished. Tony couldn't reduce the mutation rate any further. At the bottom of his log, he wrote a sober conclusion. The nature of viruses is contagion and mutation. To achieve truly safe evolution, you can't use viruses as carriers. You need a new medium. Leon muttered aloud as he read. A new medium, E-mold? Plaga-parasites? He frowned at the options. No, those are unstable external agents. We need something else. His eyes drifted across the table to a vial, and a flash of inspiration hit him. Wait, super soldier serum. He slapped the table. Jarvis, do you have any archived data on the super soldier serum? Formulas, fragments, anything? Young Master Leon, there is a related file in the main server cluster at the Stark Industries Park, but it is incomplete, Jarvis replied. Perfect. That's exactly what I need. Leon activated his traversing ability. In an instant, he vanished and reappeared, plugging a USB into the workstation. Files on the Super Soldier program populated the screen. He rubbed his chin and grinned. It looked promising. By noon, a sleepy Tony wandered into the lab. He'd come to tease Leon, but when he saw what Leon was working on, he couldn't sit still. He pulled on a research suit and joined in. Time slipped by. 6 hours dissolved into meticulous trial, analysis, and synthesis. When the precision synthesis apparatus finally chimed, a golden solution flowed into a transparent syringe. Leon and Tony stared at it, equal parts exhausted and elated. Look at her, Tony said, spreading his hands like a showman. She's beautiful. We actually did it. We're Prometheus, Leon. Leon took the syringe and spoke carefully, as if each sentence christened the result. S-virus, E-mold, plaga-parasite, and extremis. We referenced the modification method of the super soldier serum and integrated the mutation and evolution factors from those 4 keys into a single reagent. This new compound has no infectivity, no side effects, only an evolutionary ladder. Injection brings comprehensive enhancements: strength, physique, speed, cognition. It also confers virus immunity, super regeneration, limb extension potential, fungal control, bloodline parasitism and manipulation, and the ability to generate or withstand temperatures over 1,000 degrees. It's perfect. There's hardly a better word for it. Now, what should we call it? Leon counted features on his fingers. SS-type enhanced serum. It originates from the S-virus, after all. Tony snorted. That's boring. It's so powerful. Call it the Super Soldier Awesome Plus-sized serum. We've beaten that old guy Howard. Go big or go home. No way, Leon shot back. The name is terrible. Fine, it's SS-type enhanced serum. Your naming skills aren't any better, Tony said, mock offended. Sounds like cheap mass-produced branding. Suit yourself, Leon said. It's your serum, too. And you don't actually plan to hand this out across the whole Earth, do you? Tony's face turned serious. That would only create more crises, conflicts, contradictions. Of course not. Leon produced 2 more syringes and set them on the table. Remember our previous designs. He laid out 3 vials and labeled them as he spoke. This is SS1, only the S-virus characteristics. To the right is SS2, SS1 plus Extremis, and here's our newly synthesized final product, SS3. I've already thought this through. SS1 will be distributed widely. SS2 gets strict control, only injected into people we trust. SS3 requires your blood as a raw material. It can't be synthesized without it. That one is yours alone. Tony leaned back and feigned weeping with exaggerated gratitude. Wow, if you hadn't taken 400 cc of my blood for your tests already, I'd be moved to tears. Don't make a big deal of it. Experimental necessity, Leon said, clapping Tony on the shoulder. Come on, let's get you something to eat and replenish your blood. Something good to eat? Tony grimaced. Are you talking about that sticky cereal in this doomsday raccoon city? You say it's the end of the world. What do you expect? Leon was answering when a sudden fluctuation rippled through the lab. His expression went oddly blank as he felt the change descend. Chapter 79. The wings are growing. What's the matter? Why do you look like you've seen a ghost? Tony stopped, surprised. He remembered Leon's encounter in the forest yesterday. Ah, did the world consciousness show up again? Leon froze for a few seconds, then nodded with a strange expression. It was complicated, but in short, it said the SS serum won't do. It wants that infectious, evolving agent we used before. What? Did it go stupid? That thing doesn't even have a brain. Tony scoffed. Why not use the SS serum? Because the SS serum is too stable, Leon said. It eliminates the possibility of further evolution. Leon sounded exasperated. It wants something that's stable enough to work, but still able to evolve, or rather keep mutating. Tony put his hands on his hips. What a strange request. Wants to keep evolving? That's exactly the kind of advice Obadiah used to give me. He gave you those weird, complex suggestions too? Like colorful black or something, Leon asked. Something like that. I always ignored him and did things my own way. No wonder he wanted to get rid of you, Leon said. Maybe, but there's no way I'd build a rifle that heats, cools, and steers itself like he suggested, Tony grumbled. Clients across the world sure are odd. Leon went back to the bench. Fortunately, after developing the SS serum, whipping up a new S-virus is incredibly simple. He had no intention of refusing the world consciousness. If it kept popping up with problems, he might as well give it what it wanted, make the relationship useful. If Leon eventually gained control of the biohazard world, he planned to extract the world consciousness and let it be a companion for Jarvis. 5 minutes later, the final version of the S-virus was synthesized. It had an infectious mutation rate of just 1 in 1,000 and behaved almost identically to the original prototype, precisely what was needed to allow ongoing global evolution. The world consciousness was overjoyed, conveying emotions like a happy, tail-wagging rural dog. All right, Leon told it. After I eat with Tony, I'll find people to experiment on. He promised repeatedly, shrugged at Tony, and the two headed for the Institute elevator. Yesterday's carnival had emptied most workplaces. The Research Institute had stayed empty until Leon and Tony left. At the police station, only a handful of officers were on duty. Leon grumbled that such a lax government would never manage a country well, until he ran into Jane and learned the truth. Jane, the president, had declared the whole day off. Because Leon had saved the world yesterday, everyone was now treating today as an impromptu Thanksgiving Day. Leon had to admit the new government could be efficient until he saw Jane's sour expression. In the former police director's office, Leon asked, "Jane, what's wrong?" Jane had her hand on her hip. "You did something ridiculous, then abandoned me and Ada for a whole day. I thought you'd skip town to avoid punishment." "You can't accuse someone of absconding to avoid punishment unless they're a criminal," Leon said lightly. "Last night you and Ada were drunk and arguing, then decided to be together. You can't blame me." "You weren't even drunk. You were just tipsy, using alcohol as an excuse," Jane snapped, her face flushing. "Even so, you shouldn't have just left us." "I didn't leave you. I even tucked the covers in before I left," Leon protested, picking up a paper cup and pouring himself some water. "I was at the lab with Tony doing experiments. Nobody told me today was a holiday." Jane opened her mouth to reply but glanced toward the door. "Ada, why are you still hiding out there?" The door creaked open. "I was waiting for you to call me in." Ada walked in a little unsteadily. She'd been injured and recovered more slowly than Jane. "I didn't want to interrupt my boss and my rival," she said with an innocent little grin. Jane narrowed her eyes at the word rival. Then why didn't you pretend not to hear and walk away? Oh, please. I thought the president and I would be on the same side. Ada leaned close to Leon and sniffed teasingly. Compared to the two of us newcomers, someone else's skill really does stand out. Jane blinked and looked at Leon with dawning suspicion. No wonder it felt back then. Could it be that you were... Cough, cough! Leon interrupted. Stop arguing, both of you. One of you is the president and the other heads intelligence. If you bicker like this at a critical moment, how is the country supposed to function? The two women fell silent. Leon spread his arms. We need a proper heart-to-heart. What can't be solved by communication? If it can't be solved, then we just haven't communicated enough. What communication? Jane muttered, but Ada, impatient, cut in. I was waiting for him to finish my question. The scene dissolved into their usual teasing as the mood lightened. The next morning, Leon woke in a familiar bed, roused the two little helpers beside him, did some morning exercises, washed up, and they left together. The police station lobby this morning was a hive of activity, in stark contrast to yesterday's emptiness. Tony sat at a table, dark circles under his eyes, face pale like he'd overdone it. Leon plopped down and stuffed a baguette into his mouth. It was hard to say if it tasted good, but he chewed and swallowed anyway. Tony, did you get up to mischief with those two big-haired women again last night? Leon asked. Look at you, acting like you've never indulged yourself, Tony shot back. Do you still look like a scientist to me? Leon took the moral high ground. If you keep this up, are you being fair to Pepper? Tony raised an eyebrow. Didn't I pay her this month? I even gave her strawberries the other day. Come on, she's not even my girlfriend, so how am I being unfair? Pepper is allergic to strawberries, Tony, Leon said seriously. Tony nodded, drinking his milk and nibbling the baguette. Exactly. She tore into me for that gift. I deserved it. Leon watched him, then took another bite of the baguette despite himself. Tony jabbed him. And you, what about last night? Do you think I didn't notice where you went after the party? You mean the agent girl at your fortress? Tony elbowed him pointedly. She's my subordinate, thank you, Leon replied, pouring himself half of Tony's milk. Tony clinked his cup with Leon's and winked. A toast to your subordinate. A toast to your two big-haired women, too, Leon said, and they drank. You shouldn't ignore your body during continuous high-intensity missions, Leon admonished, patting Tony's arm as he stood. We're not the same. If I hadn't had blood drawn yesterday, I'd be fine, Tony protested. Blood was drawn, so I'm exhausted. Tony chewed the baguette, thought for a beat, then suddenly stood up. No, I should finish the live experiment and inject the serum. This is an alternate world. I can't let that kid have all the fun. He set off toward the research institute, determined. Chapter 80, Strengthening the Whole People. October 31st afternoon, Raccoon City Police Department conference room. You mean to tell me this virus, with only a 1 in 1,000 chance of mutating after infection, has already been solved by you? Jill sprang up, incredulous. Are you serious, Leon? She wasn't the only one. Everyone in the conference room rose to their feet. Shocked, anxious faces turned to the head of the table where Leon and Tony sat. The virus that had baffled scientists around the world had, incredibly, been overcome by these two brothers in just 2 days. If someone were to shout that Stark was a god, nobody would have been surprised. There's no need to lose our heads, Tony said, nudging Leon aside and taking center stage. I know exactly what most of you are thinking. Did God play a prank on me when I woke up this morning? He threw his arms wide like a showman. But it's true. I swear, in the name of Iron Man, the apocalypse is over. It ends today. No one answered the grand gesture. People were still reeling from the news. Tony held the pose a few awkward seconds, then tried to coax a reaction. Ahem. Shouldn't you all do something? Cheer, scream, celebrate? The room snapped out of its stupor. Voices erupted. People surged forward and grabbed Tony, lifting him into the air as they chanted, Iron Man! Iron Man! Leon drifted to a corner and watched, half amused, as his older brother was tossed up and down, grinning and calling to be thrown higher. Your brother and you have very different styles, Ada Wong said softly at his side. Leon shrugged. He's a showman. I'm not talking about him. Haven't you noticed you kind of like showing off too, just in a more subtle way? Ada laughed. Leon raised an eyebrow. Thanks for pointing out the family resemblance. You're welcome. Ada hooked her pinky with his. They're going to celebrate again later, so tonight. The usual place, Leon answered immediately. Okay, boss. Ada blinked, smiling. But Tony's much-anticipated celebration never really happened. In an apocalyptic situation, resources and time were too precious to waste. And after the announcement that a final version of the S-virus had been developed, nobody in the city wanted to relax. Hope burned in every heart. People wanted the enhancement immediately and were eager to push out and take back lost ground. Volunteers were recruited on the spot. Not one person in the room hesitated when asked. They weren't frightened of dying in a lab, only of the results being inconclusive. Jill's staff were true public servants and warriors, ready to sacrifice. They decided the order by lottery. Leon S. Kennedy, the new police officer who 2 nights earlier at the banquet had been given the lofty nickname 3 Lights by Mr. Lyon, drew first. 30 minutes later, in front of a sealed laboratory deep in the research facility, dozens watched Kennedy through the high-strength glass. He lay strapped to the experimental table, nutrient lines running into him while Leon, clad in a protective suit, administered the final version of the S-virus. The golden stock solution slid through the syringes. Those waiting outside clenched their fists and murmured encouragement. 3 Lights! Hang in there! 3 Lights! For Mr. Lyon to give you that name, you can't fail! At the banquet, Kennedy had shyly asked Leon for a nickname. After a mock-serious deliberation, Leon had dubbed him 3 Lights: Sunlight, Highlight, and Faint Light, hence the name stuck. Kennedy had worn the nickname proudly since, and the rest of the department ragged him about it affectionately. Inside the lab, after a brief calm, Kennedy's veins began to bulge, his muscles swelling in surreal lumps. He screamed, a piercing, animal howl, while the steel restraints bit into his body as he arched his back as if trying to tear free. Leon held him down, expression impassive as Kennedy thrashed and howled. For 7 tense minutes, the entire waiting room sat on edge. When Kennedy finally calmed, Leon scanned him with X-ray vision, palpated muscles and bones, and tested joints. Okay, he said. Experiment successful. Enhancement saturated. No signs of mutation. Next. Leon carried the still heavy Kennedy to a hospital bed beyond the observation glass. Cheers and shouts erupted. The rest of the tests went far more smoothly once everyone knew what to expect. Encouraged by Kennedy's result, Marvin, Elliot, Fatty, Carlos, and others lined up and were injected with the final S-virus in turn. All of them enhanced successfully, no mutations. To speed things up, some of the newly enhanced joined Leon's team and helped administer injections. By nightfall, all personnel housed at the temporary headquarters of the Republic of Colorado had received their enhancements. Of more than 1,700 people, only one experienced mutation after infection. That person recovered after receiving an antiviral serum. For the unfortunate few who needed the antiviral, there was a trade-off. The antibody response meant they could not be enhanced a second time. In the coming era of global evolution, those people would be left behind, the discarded children of this new age. If anyone to blame, it was the capriciousness of the world consciousness. After arranging for the newly enhanced to be kept under observation in the research facility, Leon returned to the lab with Ada, Jill, and Sherry. He injected the 3 of them with SS2 serum, an improved formula that incorporated extremis-like properties. The serum took hold quickly. All 3 developed extreme regenerative abilities. Sherry was still growing into it, but Jill and Ada became near supermen overnight, strength exceeding 40 tons, running speeds closing in on the speed of sound, and physical conditioning that would continue to rise over time. What surprised Leon more than their new physiques was their reaction to the world consciousness's choice about evolutionary direction. After hearing the rationale, all 3 understood, and none opposed the possibility that evolution should be allowed to continue. Their acceptance gave Leon pause. Perhaps he had misjudged the world consciousness. Maybe it wasn't as radical as he'd feared. In the following days, after the Stark brothers observed and confirmed no abnormal symptoms in all successfully enhanced volunteers, Jill's provisional government began to roll out the final S-virus to the wider city. Anyone willing to be enhanced would be given complete care by the official authorities. The people trusted the provisional government. After all, Jill had stood on the front lines for a month, blocking lethal attacks from super zombies and earning popular support. Registration centers were immediately overwhelmed. Some citizens called Jill the goddess of victory and vowed to do anything for her. While the city mobilized and lines formed, Leon and Tony continued their work in the lab. They completed trials for the SS3 serum as well, pushing the envelope of what humanity might become.